The National Day Against Pedophilia and Child Pornography. This is the afternoon session of this event that we organize in the presidency of the Council of the Ministry. It's an honor to be here. I'd like to thank the President of the Council, Giorgia Meloni, about his hospitality, and the government and the Parliament that give the support of this event, the Chamber of the Deputy and the Senate. We will speak today about the topic of silence does not protect. Sexual abuse is everyone's problem. We will start today with a speech of a special person, that is President of the Pontifical Academy for Life, Monsignor Vincenzo Paglia, that is the person that in the last year was engaged in many areas connected to Telefono Azzurro from one side and to the action for child protection, with his interest in the area of elderly, but the interest of to the new generation. In particular, he is one important resource for all the issues connected with artificial intelligence and not only TLC, but all the strategies that have to be developed in the ethical area of child and human protection. And I have the honor to introduce Vincenzo Paglia to you.
Grazie, ringrazio in particolare il professor Caffo perché Telefono Azzurro e la Pontificia Accademia per la Vita sono uniti non solo geograficamente nella stessa area, ma abbiamo anche un intento comune, appunto, che è la difesa e la promozione della vita, ovviamente in tutte le età, in tutte le condizioni, e per quel che riguarda gli abusi sui minori ovviamente tocchiamo un punto particolarmente delicato e volentieri partecipo a questo evento e lo faccio, permettetemi, in memoria anche di Papa Francesco, il quale ha fatto di questa prospettiva una delle sue dimensioni del pontificato. Già nel 2017 si rivolse ai partecipanti al congresso Child Dignity in the Digital World e già allora lui avvertiva in qualche modo l'urgenza di accelerare questo processo di attenzione. Cito una frase che per me significa l'importanza di questa attenzione anche da parte nostra. Cito: dobbiamo avere gli occhi aperti e non nasconderci una verità che è spiacevole e non verremo a vedere. Del resto, non abbiamo forse capito abbastanza in questi anni che nascondere la realtà degli abusi sessuali è un errore gravissimo e fonte di tanti mali? Questo evento vuole rispondere ancora una volta a questo avvertimento e sono lieto dei tanti esperti che sono coinvolti e mi fa piacere che la stessa Pontificia Accademia per la Vita prenda parte a questo evento, visto che nel 2020 abbiamo firmato con la presenza di Papa Francesco della Rome Call for AI Ethics, un manifesto sull'intelligenza artificiale, sull'etica dell'intelligenza artificiale, assieme alla sua prospettiva educativa ed anche giuridica. E ricordo quando nel primo incontro con il nuovo presidente della Microsoft, con il quale iniziamo questo cammino, in un incontro particolare con Papa Francesco, uno dei primi punti che Papa Francesco volle toccare fu esattamente l'impatto di questa nuova tecnologia con i ragazzi, con i giovani. Ed è per questo che ponemmo all'interno di questo manifesto la dimensione della educazione. In effetti tutti siamo consapevoli della importanza e della delicatezza di queste nuove tecnologie nell'orizzonte della formazione dei ragazzi, ma anche del controllo che può avvenire a livello di tutte le generazioni. Ecco perché una prospettiva etica, a mio avviso, deve coinvolgere tutti gli attori che sono coinvolti in questo processo, a partire appunto dai creatori degli algoritmi. Papa Francesco usò il termine algoretica per contrastare l'altro termine, la algocrazia, il potere tirannico, potremmo dire, degli algoritmi. È qui che si deve intervenire, come ovviamente si deve intervenire in tutta la prospettiva educativa, agli adulti ed anche agli adolescenti. In questo contesto le decisioni che vanno prese debbono trovare attenta la politica e, se mi è consentito, io trovo non poca disattenzione da parte della politica. Un piccolo esempio: in tutti gli stati c'è una legislazione che impedisce ai ragazzi di guidare autotreni o macchine veloci. Nulla di fronte a queste nuove strumentazioni, che in realtà sono macchine potentissime. Ora non voglio fare una facile trasposizione, inventiamo come per i bambini si dà il motorino, inventiamo anche l'iPad motorino per i nostri bambini, ma certamente l'attenzione dei legislatori, oltre che degli educatori, deve arrivare anche a questo punto. Ecco perché io sono convinto che aiutare l'intera società, e qui devo sottolineare l'impegno di Telefono Azzurro e anche del testo della Child Dignity Alliance, sono convinto che questo sia un servizio delicatissimo e urgentissimo da proporre all'intera società. Per quel che riguarda la Santa Sede, devo dire che è una delle eredità che Papa Francesco lascia alla Chiesa di oggi, che non potrà non essere accolta dal nuovo Papa e portata avanti con la stessa determinazione e, mi auguro, con la stessa efficacia. Grazie e buon lavoro.
I'd like to thank Monsignor Paglia for his commitment for the future of the child dignity process, because I think that the Holy See will stay committed in the cause that Pope Francis supported for so many years. And too, in the last months of his life, he was present in many occasions. We had a conference at the Academy of Science, which we spoke about artificial intelligence and child protection and child dignity. And in this case, the message through Cardinal Parolin was to support this process. I think it's very important in this moment in which the new generation faces this challenging situation of the new digital opportunity to stay with the children, with adolescents, and I thank you, Monsignor Paglia, for his support.
Thank you very much.
And now I like to, if Mario Platero, because Mario is in New York, is traveling, he has some commitment, I like to ask to him, is it possible to say something before the speech of Ernie Allen about what can be the dream of the development of the child dignity as in his experience that he had in the last year with us.
With great pleasure, Ernesto. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Yes, fantastic. So yes, as you said, I'm in New York, And I can tell you that just recently, the issue here has grown tremendously in terms of perception, worry, and especially moving into the action. I was particularly impressed by Monsignor Paglia's remarks, especially on 2 points, the point of the algorithm and the point on keeping up the battle and with renewed energy. Very recently, there was a documentary that has come out here about the issues, the first documentary, and it focuses on the algorithm, on the action of the major corporation and how they are programming specific algorithm to attract children on their social media, which of course allows predators and those that have the worst intention that we can think of to take advantage of it. I strongly recommend, I will try to get a copy of this documentary so that we can have it around, and that would be
we missed the connection. But waiting to be reconnected, I utilize this moment to read the message of the President of the Council that sent to us today.
Okay, yeah, here I am. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll try to be very very quick about it. So it is within this context, Ernesto, that I think that the renewed effort that we're doing around the Child Dignity Alliance becomes crucial, because we have been one, if not the only organization that has been able to put at the same table all the major players that are active in this field, you know, the big corporation, the big five. That was a major accomplishment that we did in the meeting we had at the Vatican a few years ago. And there is not a better moment to renew this effort through the Child Dignity Alliance. Why? Because it's international, because it gathers several countries behind it, and it gathers all the religious authorities that are representing, I would say, the entire world. And without their help, without moving with strength, with determination into that direction, it will be hard to convince and to exercise the kind of pressure that we need to exercise on the major corporation. Now, something is happening in Congress here in the US, but it's proceeding very, very, very slowly. I hope that with time, senators like Senator Blumenthal, that has been dedicated to this issue and who I met and who confirmed that he is determined to go forward to try to lock down the corporations to their responsibility. I hope that we can involve him in one of our next meetings, because again, as Monsignor Paglia said, we cannot go ahead without the help of the political forces and the political strength. I think I stop right here, Ernesto. Maybe I will connect again a little bit later, but I thought it was very important delivering this message from New York. And again, I stress with the fact that people are becoming much more aware than they were only a few years ago about this issue, because with artificial intelligence, this is becoming more and more dangerous. This is the new frontier. So we have to expand into that, from what the algorithm of the traditional social media are to what is expecting us with artificial intelligence, which is already at work. And there is another documentary in the making, which is exactly about that, about a young boy that has committed suicide because he had been attracted on the social media by an artificial intelligence personality that didn't exist but in his fantasy. So I just want to stress this. Let's go ahead. Let's renew the effort. Let's renew the alliance with the Vatican as we have done before. And thank you all, and thank you, Monsignor Paglia, for your wonderful words. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Mario, for this your presentation. Now, I asked to one of our members of our board, Livia Zariti, that is a journalist that started to work with us many years ago, but we are very young, still very young.
Very young.
And to read in Italian and make a synthesis in English about the letter that this morning the President of the Council gave us to this meeting. And I think it is very important because this means the commitment of the Italian government in this day to support the child dignity in the digital world. Our process in which today we will speak together with many friends and colleagues from different parts of the world. Livia.
Allora, carissimi, oggi celebriamo la Giornata Nazionale contro la pedofilia e la pedopornografia, istituita con la legge numero 41 del 2009 per sensibilizzare l'opinione pubblica sullo spregevole fenomeno dell'abuso e della violenza sui minori. In questa occasione così importante desidero prima di tutto ringraziare a nome mio e del Governo tutti i cittadini, le istituzioni, le realtà e le organizzazioni di promozione sociale e di volontariato che sono quotidianamente impegnati per combattere questa piaga, difendere i diritti dei più piccoli ed essere al fianco delle vittime e delle loro famiglie. Rivolgo un ringraziamento particolare a Telefono Azzurro che da oltre 35 anni è in prima linea nella promozione dei diritti dell'infanzia e dell'adolescenza e che ha scelto di organizzare in questa giornata un'iniziativa di alto livello per approfondire le conseguenze dello sfruttamento sessuale a danno dei minori e riflettere sull'appello lanciato da Papa Francesco, che ha invocato una nuova alleanza di tutte le istituzioni e forze educative per costruire un movimento globale a livello a tutela dei più piccoli. Obiettivo che facciamo nostro e che diventa sempre più urgente nell'epoca che stiamo vivendo, caratterizzata dal vertiginoso sviluppo delle tecnologie dell'informazione e della comunicazione. Il titolo dell'iniziativa del Telefono Azzurro è "Il silenzio non protegge". È un messaggio molto efficace e che condivido. Mi permette di aggiungere che anche il buio, l'indifferenza e l'inazione non proteggono. Per questo il Governo ha sempre agito con decisione contro lo sfruttamento sessuale dei bambini e degli adolescenti e la loro esposizione alle insidie della rete per reprimere, ma anche per prevenire, sensibilizzare, aiutare le famiglie e gli adulti di riferimento a cogliere vecchi e nuovi segnali di allarme in un mondo che cambia sempre più in fretta, per rendere tutti consapevoli che quello che minaccia i piccoli non è solo l'orrore eclatante di un crimine tra i più odiosi, ma anche un pericolo strisciante che si insinua tra le pieghe di una quotidianità sempre più pervasa dal digitale. Dotarsi di strumenti sempre più avanzati per la prevenzione e la repressione è cruciale, ma lo è altrettanto sostenere le famiglie e le reti sociali con le quali i nostri bambini e i nostri adolescenti sono quotidianamente a contatto, da un lato favorendo un'alfabetizzazione digitale diffusa, dall'altro alimentando contesti di socializzazione che contribuiscono a formare una sorta di protezione naturale. Telefono Azzurro ha ragione nel dire che l'abuso sessuale è una piaga che riguarda tutti, perché mina in profondità la dignità dei più vulnerabili e segna in maniera spesso indelebile i cittadini di domani. La lotta alla pedofilia e alla pedopornografia è una battaglia di civiltà che intendiamo combattere fino in fondo. Stiamo dando il nostro contributo in questa direzione, dotando le forze dell'ordine degli strumenti normativi e operativi di cui hanno bisogno per operare sul campo, partecipando attivamente all'attività degli organismi internazionali, rilanciando in quelle sedi anche la necessità di un impegno sempre maggiore contro l'abominio di chi rapisce i bambini per renderli schiavi del sesso, privandoli del loro presente e del loro futuro, promuovendo campagne ed iniziative di sensibilizzazione sia mediatiche che territoriali, incentivando l'alfabetizzazione digitale degli adulti, sostenendo il lavoro preziosissimo delle associazioni del terzo settore che lavorano in questo ambito e che con la loro generosa prossimità ai bisogni e alle sacche di fragilità rappresentano una mano tesa, aiutando le famiglie a esercitare la propria insostituibile funzione educativa attraverso, ad esempio, le misure in materia di monitoraggio dell'attività digitale dei minori. Monitoraggio dell'attività digitale. Da questa sfida non ci tireremo mai indietro per fare luce su una piaga che prolifera nel buio. E fare luce significa anche saper accogliere le piccole vittime e far sapere a ciascuna di loro e agli adulti che le circondano che chiedere aiuto si può e anzi si deve. In questo senso voglio ricordare che tra i tanti strumenti a disposizione c'è il numero 114 Emergenza Infanzia della Presidenza del Consiglio, affidato proprio a Telefono Azzurro. I numeri ci dicono che è un mezzo estremamente importante per intervenire tempestivamente su situazioni di pericolo potenziale o conclamato. Rivolgendomi ai partecipanti al congresso Child Dignity in the Digital World, Papa Francesco ha detto: vogliamo bandire dalla faccia della terra la violenza e ogni tipo di abuso nei confronti dei minori. Guardiamoli negli occhi, sono le vostre figlie, i vostri figli. Dobbiamo amarli come capolavori e figli di Dio. Hanno diritto a una vita buona, abbiamo il dovere di fare tutto il possibile perché la abbiano. Parole che ci spronano oggi a fare la nostra parte, senza esitazione, con coraggio, determinazione, per difendere i più piccoli e conservare intatti il loro presente e il loro futuro. Vi ringrazio. Prego.
Dottor Martellozzo, to make a synthesis for
I will provide
the international guest.
a brief summary for our international guests so they can have a feeling of this wonderful speech from our Prime Minister. She was very touched by the words of Pope Francis, who's stating very clearly that children should be put at the center of our work because child sexual abuse is abhorrent and it should be not tolerated. She also states that she is delighted to cooperate and to work closely with organizations of the third sector, such as Telefono Azzurro, and to ensure that the silence doesn't remain so, but children are heard, so we can then provide the right support. She's also very supportive of the work that has been done by third sectors, so far so that families are felt supported, educated, not only in the real world, but also in the digital world, which is always changing. She argues that it's not just a war against child sexual abuse and exploitation, it's a civil battle that we all have to take part. And the government takes pride and priority to support this cause. She supports, finally, the fact that children needs to be feeling safe, secure and supported, and 114 is the new number that children can feel safe to call that has been given to Telefono Azzurro to provide the support to children. And finally, just to echo the words of Pope Francis, who claims that child sexual abuse should not exist and we should all fight this cause. Children have the right to live in a safe and happy place, supported by the right organizations and their families.
Thank you, Dr. Martellozzo, for this summary. But the sense is that the Prime Minister and the President of the Republic, with another message, give us the opportunity to go ahead in this process, a process that started many years ago, and I like to ask to Ernie Ellen, that is a founder and chair of We Protect Global Alliance, which share many of the aspects of this long process, to be the speaker now, because Ernie was the president, the CEO of ICMEC, and we know together for many years. But we decided to invest a lot of our time, of our energy, to build a network to work together, because only the collaboration between different entities can change this complicated world for all children. And Ernie, to you, the podium.
Thank you, Ernesto. Let me say I'm honored to follow the inspiring words of Archbishop Paglia, of the message from the Prime Minister. A little brief history. In 2011, Professor Caffo and I convened a meeting in the Italian Senate that was sponsored by Italy's brilliant pediatric hospital, Bambino Gesù, by the Mayo Clinic in the United States, and others. And that meeting concluded that child sexual abuse had become more than a crime. It had become a public health crisis. In 2017, we followed up on that meeting with a World Congress, Child Dignity in the Digital World, held at Pontifical Gregorian University. And at that meeting, Pope Francis spoke of the tension between the idea of a digital world as a realm of unlimited freedom of expression and the need for responsible use of technologies and a recognition of their limits. He said it's not enough to understand, we must act. The longer we wait, the more entrenched and insurmountable this evil becomes. Well, I submit that we're there again. In 2018, and I see my friend Donna Humaid, Lieutenant Colonel in the United Arab Emirates, is with us today. In response to that challenge, in 2018, the UAE convened faith leaders from around the world in Abu Dhabi. The goal was to reach into every church, every mosque, synagogue, temple, ashram, other places of worship. One of the results of that meeting was the creation of an interfaith alliance. And then in 2019, we convened faith leaders with technology leaders and other experts at the Pontifical Academies of Science, where they heard from Pope Francis, Cardinal Parolin, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Europe's chief rabbi, Hindu guru Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and many others. Pope Francis said, we cannot hide from an unpleasant truth we would rather not see. He said, surely we have realized that concealing the reality of sexual abuse is a grave error and the source of many other evils. He challenged us to face reality. I think we're doing that, but the problems are still growing. As Ernesto mentioned, I'm honored to chair the We Protect Global Alliance Policy Board. 103 countries, including Italy, plus tech companies, civil society, and international bodies, including the European Union. Among many other things, the Alliance performs a global threat assessment. Recently, we found that 54% of young adults surveyed around the world had experienced some form of sexual harm online as children. Girls more than boys, minorities were at particular risk, but we found a problem in every region. It was highest in North America, Western Europe, and Australia, but it was still 59% in Central America, 57% in Southern Africa, 52% in Southeast Asia, 44% in the Middle East. At least half of the world's children have already been harmed. This is happening at the same time that more children are online today than ever before. 1 in 3 internet users is a child. More than 1.5 billion children are online today, and social media continues to grow with more than 4.7 billion users, 59% of all the people on Earth. Online solicitation and grooming has more than doubled. On gaming platforms, children are in direct contact with other players, adults and children. And those seeking to abuse children can lock them into high-risk grooming conversations in as little as 19 seconds after the first contact. Just 2 weeks ago, a 10-year-old girl in California was abducted and sexually abused by a 24-year-old man she met on a gaming site. Was that unusual? I'm pleased that Robert Hoving of InHope is with us today. InHope, the network of internet hotlines, reported that 89% of its reports involved children aged 3 to 13. The Internet Watch Foundation reported a 360% increase in self-generated imagery of 7 to 10-year-olds. Mario Calvo-Platero talked about the risk to children online and the growing incidence of teenage suicide. The FBI reports that sextortion targeting children and teens online has increased 7,200%. Perpetrators manipulate children into sharing sexual images and videos of themselves and then extort them for money. One result is a dramatic increase in youth suicides. The CDC reports that suicide is now the second leading cause of death among 10 to 14-year-olds. And globally, just 17% of sextortion cases are ever reported. Live streaming child sexual abuse is now a global enterprise, particularly in poor countries. And human traffickers have migrated from the streets to the internet and social media. Why? It's easier, less risky, and much more profitable. This is also a crisis of hidden victims. When the abuse is photographed and the image is posted online, reporting drops to virtually zero. These children do not tell. They're harmed when they're abused, and they're harmed again every time their photo is redistributed. And today, artificial intelligence is being used to create and distribute child sexual abuse material, including deep fake CSAM. One more challenge: the battle between privacy and child protection. At our 2017 World Congress, Pope Francis spoke of the, quote, mythical vision of the internet as a realm of unlimited freedom. He said this has nothing to do with the exercise of freedom. It has to do with crimes that need to be fought with intelligence and determination. He was right. Technology has changed the way those with sexual interest in children access them and prey upon them. Today, privacy advocates argue that mandating companies to detect, report, and remove child sexual abuse material and stop the online grooming of children violates the privacy rights of users. But I ask, what about the privacy rights of the child? So on this National Day Against Pedophilia, we must recognize that child sexual abuse is truly a public health crisis. Yet prevention efforts are under-prioritized and underfunded. And finally, prevention is key, but so is regulation. And I want to take just a minute to thank the European Union and Europe generally for its leadership. Antonio Labrador Jimenez from the EU is with us today. The leadership of his commissioner has been extraordinary. It's led the world in this effort. Australia's e-safety commissioner calls this the tech industry's seatbelt moment. A generation ago, governments began to mandate common sense safety protections into product design. Innovations like seatbelts, child safety seats, and others. Many industries were opposed, but the result has been millions of lives saved and no harm whatsoever to the businesses. In fact, it strengthened their products. So on this National Day Against Pedophilia, I hope this is our seatbelt moment. This crisis is not yet a true priority on global policy agendas. Pope Francis said, it's not enough to understand, we must act. I am deeply grateful for Italy's extraordinary leadership and for that of the Holy See, Telefono Azzurro, the European Union, the United Arab Emirates, and all of you. Let's act now, act forcefully, and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie, for your inspiring speech. And before to give to our Vice Minister the floor, I ask Antonio Labrador, that is connected. I know that is member of the International for the Commission about safety, and you have to a meeting in a short time. I ask to Antonio Labrador to make his presentation, and after we go back to Vice Minister Bellucci.
Thank you very much, Professor Caffo. I hope that you can hear me okay. Thank you for the invitation to this important event, and thank you very much for all your efforts in this topic. I wanted to focus my presentation on the European level mechanisms for the protection of children online, in particular against child sexual abuse. In the European Commission, we basically have three tools to be helpful to EU citizens. Those are legislation, funding, and coordination, facilitation of coordination and cooperation. The framework that guides our work is the EU strategy for a more effective fight against child sexual abuse, which was one of the first initiatives adopted by the previous commissioner, whom Ernie Allen just referred to. And on this strategy, we wanted to put forward a number of concrete initiatives to prevent and combat these crimes, both legislative and non-legislative, using these three main tools that we have in the EU to be helpful to EU citizens and to tackle the issue of child sexual abuse from all perspectives in a holistic way, covering prevention, assistance to victims, as well as investigations and prosecutions. First, when it comes to the legal framework in the EU, we basically have two types of legal instruments to protect children online. One set of instruments is based on internal market rules, and they impose obligations on companies, on online service providers. And the other set of legislations that we have are criminal law legislations, which impose obligations on countries. That's the main distinction, the main separation. When it comes to the set of legislative instruments that impose obligations on companies, we have at the moment already in place the Digital Services Act that imposes obligations on companies to assess the risk that their services pose for users, and in particular for children. One of the articles of the Digital Services Act refers to the protection of minors online, and it requires that companies put in place measures to ensure the privacy, safety, and security of children. And the Commission will be publishing guidelines very soon for public consultation, so that everyone can provide input to these guidelines that will be used by service providers to decide the services that all of us, or many of us, use on a daily basis, but most importantly, services that children also use on a daily basis. Then we also have legislation that at the moment enables companies to detect child sexual abuse in private communications. This is something that the companies have been doing for over 15 years, and that it's instrumental for law enforcement in the EU and globally to initiate investigations and to rescue children from ongoing abuse. This legislation will expire in April next year, so we are now working on legislation that will replace it. This is a legislative proposal to prevent and combat child sexual abuse that will do two things. One, to impose obligations on companies to first prevent the dissemination of child sexual abuse material and grooming in the services. And if the prevention measures are not enough, the companies may be required to detect, report, remove, and block child sexual abuse material and grooming in their services. The other thing that this legislation that is now being discussed will do is to create an EU center to prevent and combat child sexual abuse, an EU agency dedicated exclusively to the protection of children online from child sexual abuse. It will serve as some sort of EU NECMEC that will receive the reports from the companies and then forward those reports, those that are actionable, to law enforcement for action. This EU center will also serve as a knowledge hub for prevention and assistance to victims to support member states' public authorities in preventing these crimes and in supporting survivors. Then just a word about the other set of legislation, the criminal law framework. This is a 2011 directive that is now being revised, because this directive deals with the online and the offline aspects of the crime. But as you can imagine, in 13 years, 14 now since this directive was adopted, it's like a different era when it comes to the online world. So there was a need to update this directive, and it's now being discussed internally in the EU, and it will cover, for example, deep fakes, AI-generated material, manuals on how to sexually abuse children. It will also make it mandatory for employers that are looking at hiring people for jobs that require close and regular contact with children, that they ask for the criminal records of this person for both remunerated and voluntary activities. It will also revise the statute of limitations to make sure that victims of these crimes that perhaps in their cases took place 20, 30 years ago, they have the opportunity to seek justice for those crimes, because in a number of member states, the statute of limitations is such that only they are able to seek justice for a short period of time after the age of majority. This is the first tool that we have, legislation, but we have other two. The other one is coordination, and there we facilitate cooperation with the companies, with academia, with law enforcement. We are one of the co-founders of the We Protect Global Alliance, as Ernie Allen just talked about. And we also organize the EU Internet Forum with the companies. And we are also preparing a network of experts focused on prevention of child sexual abuse as a formal expert group of the Commission. And finally, there is funding that we make available to organizations that fight on the ground against these crimes, law enforcement, NGOs, and academia. Also in the area of research, so that those that need to combat these crimes on the ground have the necessary tools to do so. I'm going to stop here. It was very quick, but I hope that you were able to get an overview of these main three tools that we have in the European Commission to be helpful to you citizens and of course to children. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio, and I think from our side, because this morning I spoke with many representatives of the institution in Italy, Italian police, postal police, and with the authority for privacy, and we like to support the process that give to the at the European level many opportunity to manage this complicated area that is child protection online. One interesting information for all the international colleagues is that a few days ago, the Italian Agency for Communication decided to give to Telefono Azzurro the role of trusted flagger. That is an important aspect that gives us the opportunity to do more in this area and to work more directly with institutions and companies to report cases of abuse online, and this gives us the opportunity to be within hope with the European Commission more active in this area. Two, if we consider the European agency an important objective that you have to achieve in the next months with the support of the European Parliament and in particular the European Commission. Now I have the honor to introduce to you Maria Teresa Bellucci, that is not only the Deputy Minister for Labour and Social Policy, involved in many areas of the third sector in Italy, but she's too a colleague and a psychologist from La Sapienza in Rome, and she's a special person in the commitment for child protection, and Maria Teresa is for you the floor.
Thank you very much, President. It's a very pleasure for me to be here now. Can I speak Italian? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Allora, anche in questa giornata nazionale contro la pedofilia e la pedopornografia, Telefono Azzurro si fa trovare pronto, vigile e attento a poter innanzitutto sollecitare le istituzioni, i professionisti del settore, le associazioni, tutti coloro i quali hanno il dovere di mettersi in rete, di prendersi per mano e di affrontare il contrasto alla pedopornografia e alla pedofilia, che purtroppo anche quest'anno registriamo in aumento. Allora è davvero doloroso ogni anno doverci incontrare per non poter fare l'elenco dei risultati positivi che si sono conseguiti, ma in realtà il dover fare l'elenco di un dramma che continua a permanere ma che si trasforma. Un dramma che diciamo è particolarmente attinente alle trasformazioni che sono caratteristiche di quest'epoca. Oggi viviamo il tempo della trasformazione digitale, di una trasformazione sociale, di qualcosa che è in continuo cambiamento. Il Papa diceva, Papa Francesco, che come tutti viviamo in questi giorni la sua perdita, la sua mancanza, ma le sue parole rimangono dentro nei nostri cuori e nella nostra mente. Diceva, più che una serie di cambiamenti, questa è proprio l'epoca del cambiamento, un cambiamento d'epoca. E in questo cambiamento d'epoca la pedopornografia e la pedofilia entra nelle trasformazioni, nelle transizioni, soprattutto quelle digitali che stiamo vivendo, e si moltiplica ancora di più. Avete certamente, perché oggi sono presenti esperti del settore, letto il report fatto, il dossier fatto anche quest'anno da Telefono Azzurro, e avete potuto quindi approfondire come la pedopornografia online sia un male che aumenta in maniera così esponenziale da diventare dilagante. Avete potuto constatare come l'intelligenza artificiale diventa uno strumento per generare delle immagini pedopornografiche che ancora di più fanno male e diventano una lacerazione dei diritti fondamentali dell'uomo, della nostra società, non soltanto in Italia purtroppo, ma nel mondo. Allora, per fare questo, e ricordo di nuovo le parole del Santo Padre, venivamo richiamati tutti, in un tempo non molto lontano, a poter proporre una nuova alleanza, perché quelle alleanze che sono in essere fino ad oggi evidentemente non sono capaci di contrastare la diffusione della pedopornografia e della pedofilia e della violenza sessuale in genere. Una nuova alleanza che possa sì richiamare l'attenzione ancora maggiore delle istituzioni, delle forze dell'ordine, della comunità scientifica, del mondo delle professionalità, dei servizi sociali, mettendo a servizio che cosa? Beh, io credo innanzitutto mettendo a servizio proprio quella transizione tecnologica e quell'innovazione tecnologica, che può essere un potente antidoto se utilizzato in maniera efficace e per il bene e non per il male. Io credo fermamente che le innovazioni scientifiche e tecnologiche possano essere utilizzate o contro l'uomo oppure a favore dell'uomo. Dipende da chi? Dall'uomo stesso. C'è una responsabilità individuale e collettiva di poter dominare un progresso che è capace di andare alla stessa velocità della devianza, ovviamente dell'ovviamente azione che è contro l'uomo, in particolare in questo caso contro i più fragili tra i fragili e quindi i minori. Penso che su questo abbiamo il compito di fare molto di più e meglio. Da una parte c'è un ritardo storico. È vero che la criminalità ha tempi molto più celeri della legalità, i fenomeni sociali in genere ce lo fanno vedere, ma è vero anche che in tema di transizione tecnologica, di intelligenza artificiale e di nuove tecnologie si poteva essere molto più tempestivi di quanto non lo sia stato negli anni passati. Il nostro Presidente del Consiglio, Giorgia Meloni, quando c'è stata la presidenza, si è avuta la presidenza italiana del G7, ha richiamato un'attenzione sulla transizione tecnologica, l'intelligenza artificiale, richiamando anche l'attenzione di tutte le grandi economie in maniera allargata, perché comprendeva quanto questo fosse un tema prioritario, ma che doveva essere posto al centro dell'attenzione perché si era già in ritardo. E l'invito del Santo Padre in quell'occasione era un richiamo a far sì che le riflessioni degli Stati non fossero soltanto di carattere politico, economico, ma fossero innanzitutto di carattere etico, mettendo al centro quella questione dell'algoretica che bene era stata rappresentata da Papa Francesco. Quindi io credo che sia fondamentale unire, oltre al rafforzamento dei servizi, io come Vice Ministro al Lavoro e alle Politiche Sociali, in questi 2 anni e mezzo cosa ho portato avanti? Innanzitutto rafforzare le politiche strutturali che vengono poste in essere dal Governo in campo di politiche sociali e dei servizi sociali. Abbiamo potenziato i servizi sociali stanziando dei fondi straordinari, oltre 300 milioni di euro, per costituire delle equip multidisciplinari e non lasciare gli assistenti sociali soli, ad essere un presidio di ascolto, di attenzione, di prossimità. Equip multidisciplinari fatte da educatori, psicologi, da pedagogisti, ma anche da istruttori amministrativi che possano avere sempre più il compito di registrare e monitorare ciò che accade, perché i dati sono fondamentali per poter porre in essere delle politiche che non inseguano il fenomeno, ma che lo anticipino e che quindi possano porre in essere un'azione di prevenzione. E poi, soprattutto, quello di fortificare il terzo settore, Ecco, il terzo settore, ma lo conosce bene il Telefono Azzurro, io lo ringrazio ogni volta che vengo invitata e ho la possibilità di intervenire ai tanti convegni, le tante iniziative e tanti momenti di sollecitazione che il Telefono Azzurro fa durante l'anno. Questa ne è una, ma ovviamente non è l'unica giornata e mai potrebbe essere una giornata efficace se fosse l'unica, ma in tutte quelle occasioni ringrazio il Telefono Azzurro perché laddove non è arrivato l'istituzione, laddove ancora deve arrivare l'istituzione, il Telefono Azzurro, come le realtà del terzo settore, come il Telefono Azzurro sono in grado di fare, ci sono per poter raccogliere quel grido di aiuto. E allora abbiamo dato un'attenzione particolare al terzo settore in tanti termini diversi, nel dargli stabilità, del dargli un riconoscimento europeo, cosa che abbiamo ottenuto con l'autorizzazione alla fiscalità agevolata da parte dell'Europa, nel poter riformare il codice del terzo settore laddove diventava troppa burocrazia e poca capacità di rispettare la Costituzione e quindi di favorire la libera associazione dei cittadini laddove costruiscono il bene comune. Abbiamo aumentato i fondi, abbiamo destinato fondi ad hoc proprio all'intelligenza artificiale e all'utilizzo dell'intelligenza artificiale in modo etico e sapiente, attuando quell'azione di formazione, informazione, e da lì un bando il primo anno che abbiamo stanziato 2,5 milioni di euro con un avviso pubblico che mai era stato proposto fino ad ora. Abbiamo poi aumentato le risorse per avere dei presidi all'interno dei territori, e in particolare di quei territori più fragili, ad alta povertà educativa. Lo dite bene nella vostra relazione. I minori più fragili sono quelli più emarginati, quelli più poveri, quelli che hanno meno un presidio di protezione, quelli che vivono in un tessuto di delinquenza, di criminalità, quelli che vivono una condizione di maggiore fragilità, come la condizione di disabilità. Abbiamo stanziato anche qui inizialmente 250 milioni di euro, oggi siamo arrivati trovandone ulteriormente a 450 milioni di euro per aprire 100 centri di aggregazione per preadolescenti e di adolescenti, luoghi fisici, reali, con operatori del settore, con educatori, professionisti che possano accompagnare i più giovani a conoscere se stessi, ma possono anche essere delle sentinelle per individuare quei segnali di allarme che ci sono. Perché la violenza, il maltrattamento, l'abuso non è una porta che si spalanca all'improvviso senza avere invece dei fattori prodromici che possano essere intercettati. Ma per poterli vedere c'è bisogno di una comunità e di un presidio territoriale presente, vivo, dinamico, che è in grado di poter raccogliere questi segnali. E poi anche, il professor Caffo lo sa bene, lo ringrazio per essere stato vicino anche all'istituzione della Giornata Nazionale dell'Ascolto del Minore. Noi come governo abbiamo istituito questa giornata ritenendo che l'ascolto debba essere una priorità. Non si può intercettare il fenomeno della pedofilia o della pedopornografia senza essere in grado di ascoltare. Ecco, è quello che si dà per scontato come la capacità d'ascolto degli adulti, in realtà vediamo come non sia invece così presente nella vita delle persone di minore età. Ecco, abbiamo istituito questa giornata, ma l'abbiamo istituita per anche qui sensibilizzare e richiamare a raccolta tutti. Il mondo della scuola, dei servizi sociali, delle forze anche dell'ordine, ma ringrazio la Polizia Postale per il grandissimo lavoro che viene svolto ogni anno, tutti gli interlocutori e ovviamente le famiglie stesse, per poter ascoltare meglio e capire come ascoltare le persone di minore età. E in questo anche abbiamo trovato il Telefono Azzurro un alleato nel sottolineare quanto sia importante mettersi nella posizione di creare dei contesti capaci di poter favorire l'ascolto dei minori. Un bambino di 8 anni, 9 anni, 10 anni è assolutamente in grado di poter dire ciò che pensa, ciò che sogna, ciò di cui ha paura. Ha però bisogno di un contesto che sia capace di poter sostenere la sua modalità di espressione, e in questo quindi è necessario che noi si sia sempre più capaci di creare dei contesti adeguati. Sono tante le azioni, ma ovviamente non sono ancora sufficienti, e quindi noi prendiamo in mano quel manifesto per la protezione dell'infanzia che è stato stilato da Telefono Azzurro come elemento di ispirazione, come pungolo a fare sempre meglio e sempre di più. In Italia è stato anche istituito l'Osservatorio per il contrasto alla pedofilia e alla pedopornografia, una realtà molto importante che fa veramente bene in questo ambito è Metere, e Don Fortunato Di Noto, che tutti gli anni ci restituisce un panorama del tutto critico e che so che sta lavorando al nuovo piano per la prevenzione e il contrasto degli abusi e dello sfruttamento sessuale dei minori. E su questo quindi, come ha detto bene anche il nostro Presidente del Consiglio, nella lettera che vi ha mandato il Governo è attento, è vigile, è consapevole che quello che si è fatto finora non è sufficiente, che è necessario essere per primi capaci di favorire quell'alleanza a cui ci richiamava il Santo Padre, ma che certamente ribadiamo con forza la volontà di esserci e di non chiudere gli occhi. Ecco, avete dedicato a questa giornata un titolo particolarmente toccante: il silenzio non protegge. L'abuso sessuale è un problema di tutti, nessuno escluso, nessuno può ritenersi non colpevole rispetto a questo dramma e non quindi coinvolto nel doverlo affrontare sempre più con forza, con sinergia, con capacità di messa a servizio. Quindi io sono qui per ringraziare il Telefono Azzurro, per ovviamente assumermi le responsabilità che sono date dalla mia delega e per ascoltare tutti coloro i quali hanno un contributo fondamentale da dare, che sono costantemente attivi in questo ambito e che fanno sì comunque che nonostante i dati drammatici non siano ancora più problematici e ancora più incresciosi di quelli che sono attualmente. Quindi grazie e ovviamente confermo la mia messa a disposizione.
I'd like to thank Maria-Teresa Bellucci that is so special in this action to protect children. And I ask to our colleague if she can summarize in English.
Yeah, but it was a very long speech. Thank you, and I love your positivity. I've made a few notes just to summarize for those people, excuse me, that are online so they can follow what was said. The speech was incredibly positive, although it started with a slight negative note saying that it's your desire to start with all the wonderful things that we have been doing, but it's very challenging because the list of risks to children in particular is much longer. However, the Minister Bellucci, she welcomes a new partnership, a new starting a new service that can provide this support for children and the technological support also for those third sectors that work in fighting this cause. She welcomes the speech of Meloni that we heard before and the kind work of Pope Francis in fighting this cause. She's also mentioned all our dedication in this cause and the many thousands of euros that have been located to social services particularly, so they don't feel alone, but they feel supported and they're equipped with the right knowledge and with the right structure to be able to provide the service that they're designed to. So she's particularly positive when it comes to supporting the third sector, and she wants to continue to commit to her cause given her powerful position, particularly when it comes to crimes against children online. And the fight continues and it becomes harder and harder, particularly when it comes to, now that we heard this morning as well, the use of AI. She also mentions that it's important that we start addressing and recognizing the signs of abuse, because these signs are visible. And therefore, they should empower us to be able to action and to support children and observe what's going on, but not just observe, but to action and provide the infrastructure that the services need to be able to do so in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I like to give the floor to Dr. Giuseppe Morabito, that is in the place of the president of S.O.S. S.O.S is the International Society of Social Intervention.
Thank you. I hope you will forgive me if I'm not a colleague, a psychiatrist belonging to S.O.S. President Caffo, Deputy Minister Bellucci, Professor Martellozzo, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank very much Telefono Azzurro and its president, Professor Ernesto Caffo, for this initiative and for inviting the Italian Society for International Organization. As a board member of S.O.S and coordinator of the Analysis and Research Unit, I'm honored to be here today on behalf of the Society and its president, Ambassador Riccardo Sessa. S.O.S was created in 1944, and it is the Italian Association for the United Nations, member of the World Federation of United Nations Associations. S.O.S has served as a main link between Italy and the UN system for more than 10 years, until 1955, the year Italy joined the United Nations as a member state. After that, S.O.S has continued to act in accordance with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, particularly the respect of human rights. Starting from its legacy, the Society regards human rights and, in particular, the protection of children of paramount importance in today's society more than ever. One of the aims of the Society is to promote the protection of human rights according to Article 1 of its statute. The Society strongly believes that it is crucial to foster synergies among different entities in order to address this topic. This is why S.O.S is fully committed to continue the fruitful collaboration with Telefono Azzurro. Indeed, S.O.S and Telefono Azzurro signed a Memorandum of Understanding in January 2024, setting out a comprehensive framework of cooperation, starting from educational programs to events organization. In addition, the agreement set up an observatory on the protection of the most vulnerable categories and the establishment of mechanisms for training trainers on these topics. In November 2024, we were together here at Palazzo Chigi in occasion of a pivotal event organized by S.O.S and Telefono Azzurro on the future of child rights, underlined that it is vital to adequate the legal framework to deal with current challenges and threats. In addition, S.O.S promotes the respect of human rights through its research and analysis activities, as well as its several training courses, starting from the diplomatic course to the Master of International Relations, Global Crisis, Leadership, Human Rights. A good example of S.O.S commitment to the promotion of human rights is the course Teaching Human Rights, organized in collaboration with the UN office in Assisi. During its last edition, in November 2024, a specific focus was on the protection of children. Most recently, President Riccardo Sessa was in Assisi, and during his stay, he had a fruitful meeting with the Seraphic Institute of Assisi, which hosts dozens of young people affected by serious illnesses. Among several discussions, President Sessa proposed to organize events on these issues, which, according to our vision, could see Telefono Azzurro as the main partner. Moreover, S.O.S, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other institutions, is organizing an event on humanitarian law in October, which will include a panel dedicated to childhood. We have already highlighted the importance of involving Telefono Azzurro in this initiative. In an international scenario characterized by violent regional conflicts, our ability to protect every child is constantly under threat. From February 22 to December 24, 2024, Ukraine has registered nearly one child death per day, for a total of 669 child casualties, according to UNHCR. Among the fatalities of the last year and a half in Gaza, 15,000 were the children killed, according to UNICEF. In addition, UNICEF has pointed out that following the breakdown of the ceasefire in the end of March 2025, at least 322 children were killed in Gaza. These numbers force us to reflect on how we intend to protect this vulnerable category. Another disturbing phenomenon is that of children who are victims of the phenomenon of child soldiers. However, the threats that affect the lives of minors all around the world are not confined to the context of war. Pedophilia and child pornography are also major issues related to the everyday life of children. What we shall carefully consider is the fact that even though these are long-standing issues, they are now exhibiting entirely new features, as has been shown clearly before, and consequences due to the improper use of new technologies, in particular artificial intelligence. This is why it's important to talk about the importance of this day. Allow me to spend a few words on the history that brought us here to this event. The origins of the National Day dedicated to fighting pedophilia and child pornography date back to May 4, 2009, when the Italian law, the law number 41, 2009, established it in order to raise awareness and on the prevention of child abuse. From then on, every year, events have been held to address the question, especially thanks to the cooperation and the serious work of Telefono Azzurro. The efforts on the issue have a wider spectrum, and the importance of the question of pedophilia and child pornography is widely recognized on an international level. Initiatives in this field began in November 1989 with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, which has opened the door to a broader recognition of children's rights, among which the one of being protected from all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. More specifically, the addition of the optional protocol to the CRC on the sale of children, child prostitution and child pornography of May 25, 2000 has tackled the issue of criminalizing child prostitution and child pornography through the establishment of jurisdictional rules, mutual legal assistance, extradition. Italy has ratified both the UN Convention in September 1991 and the optional protocol in January 2002, demonstrating its commitment to the issue. If we look at the regional level, we find the Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, also known as the Lanzarote Convention, requiring the criminalization of all kinds of sexual offenses against children. The convention was ratified by Italy in 2013. Together with it, the Lanzarote Committee represents the body entitled to monitor the parties' effective implementation of the convention. Even though the convention has not been ratified by the European Union, the EU Parliament, in its 2023 report on the institutional relations between the European Union and the Council of Europe, has called for progress and accession on the issue. To sum up, Italy has always been an active partner in the international efforts, assuming obligations and implementing key recommendations stemming from all of the three mentioned conventions. Our country has demonstrated a great sensitivity towards the issue, and is now demonstrating its ability to adapt and mitigate the risk resulting from the new developments. In particular, as previously mentioned, a new area of concern is represented by the new digital threats, namely artificial intelligence and privacy violation. In this field, Italy has joined the We Protect Global Alliance, endorsing the 2014 London Statement of Action, and participating in ministerial summits with a view to aligning its national legislation and best practices on online child sexual exploitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's working, yes. In the next phase, we're moving to the online participants, who I'm sure they're ready. There's a presentation by Hans Zollner, who is also the representative of the Roman Diocese office dedicated to safeguarding minors and vulnerable people. Not sure if we have the connection with Zola. If we can check, please.
And thank you for joining. Thank you for having me at this conference in which we join again, as every year, in the fight for a better future for children and young people. And it is time, I think, to remember some of the most important initiatives that we have taken over the years. For me, one of the most emblematic events was happening in 2017, when we co-organized from our then Center for Child Protection, which is now the Institute of Anthropology, at the Pontifical Gregorian University, a conference jointly with We Protect and with Telefono Azzurro and others, in line of the fight for a better and a safer digital world, and in line with all what we can do to alert the key stakeholders in this area, the governments, the tech companies, researchers, NGOs, law enforcement, religions, to bring them together and to do the best they can for a better current situation and for the future. We were very successful in having renowned experts, prestigious institutions represented, and those movers and shakers that can really make a difference. At the end of the 2017 Congress, Child Dignity in the Digital World, I felt very much optimistic about the possibility to bring together the best in humankind and the most forward-looking and collaborative people and organizations whose concern is to bring about change and to make the world and the digital world a safer place. Unfortunately, after 2017, for a variety of reasons, not least the pandemic, the effort went somehow downhill, in my perception at least, and we need to regain strength. We need to come together again with that focused purpose and with the willingness not only to have other conferences, other publications, but also to make happen what we promised to each other in 2017. As Pope Francis has passed away a few weeks ago, I am finishing with this reminder that if you take his text that he read out at the end of the 2017 summit, it is a testimony to the many aspects that we need to consider, but also to the clarity about where do we stand today and what needs to be done, who should be engaged in this, and why we are all together in this, or we don't make any difference. If you read the text of Pope Francis's final address to the participants of the 2017 summit, it is astounding to see that much of this is still very valid, is still also a call for action. Plus, we need to add something that wasn't so much on the horizon 8 years ago, that is artificial intelligence and its influence on the internet as such and on human life in general for young people and also adults, plus the generative artificial intelligence and its opportunities and its threats to the safety, the integrity, and the dignity of children. I am very conscious that we are in a fight that is very important and that needs our goodwill, that needs putting the resources at the disposal of our efforts so that we really don't continue to talk about what needs to be done, but come into the working process, into the action. Otherwise, we will be asked in a few years or decades, why didn't you really bring all those forces together that are necessary to combat the evil that is happening on the internet and through all these means, but also why we didn't really make all possible efforts to coalesce, to unite, and to make a dash forward for a better and a safer world online for children and also for all those who are threatened as vulnerable persons.
Now, before we move on to some of our presentations, we would like to share with you another video, a very short video, by Baroness Schild, who is an incredibly powerful figure in the sphere of child sexual abuse and exploitation. She's a parliamentarian and a funder of We Protect. She's also the former UK First Minister for Internet Safety and Security and UK Ambassador for Digital Industry and Digital Economy Advisor to the Prime Minister. So if we can have a video, please, I would really appreciate. Thank you.
Esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, and the young people joining us today, it is an honor to contribute to this gathering and to stand with all of you committed to protecting children and safeguarding their dignity in an increasingly complex and AI-enabled world. We come together at a moment of global reckoning and remembrance. The recent passing of His Holiness Pope Francis has left a profound void, not only for people of faith, but for all those who believe in the moral imperative to protect the most vulnerable among us. In 2017, at the Child Dignity in the Digital World Congress in Rome, a landmark event hosted by the Pontifical Gregorian University, Telefono Azzurro, and the We Protect Global Alliance, Pope Francis addressed the international community with remarkable clarity and conviction. His words still resonate today. He said, "We must ban from the earth violence in every form of abuse against children. Let us look into their eyes. They are your sons and daughters. They have the right to a good life, and we have the duty to do everything possible to ensure that right." These were not just words of comfort, they were a global call to conscience. When I founded the We Protect Global Alliance, I believed and still believe that multi-stakeholder global collaboration is the only way to confront online child sexual abuse. Over the past decade, we've seen extraordinary partnerships forged across borders and sectors, but the threat has not diminished, it has evolved. With the rise of AI, we now face an escalation unlike anything we've experienced before. Synthetic child abuse material is being created at scale, and children are being groomed for sexual exploitation by automated systems that speak with empathy and precision. And algorithms trained to maximize engagement and profit are pushing harmful content to young users, not by accident, but because it is what they are designed to do. We are no longer confronting isolated threats, but a systematic industrialized crisis, one that moves at the speed of computation, and one for which the tools of the past are painfully inadequate. That is why we must move beyond reactive models. We need to embrace protection in the very foundations of the technologies we build. Safety must be designed into digital platforms from the start, not bolted on as an afterthought. And that is why I believe the time has come to reignite the Child Dignity Alliance, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a critical global platform for coordination, moral leadership, and lasting action. We are not lacking in initiatives, regulations, or innovation, but we are facing a fragmentation of effort and a vacuum of coherence. What is missing is alignment, a force capable of bringing together governments, platforms, civil society, researchers, and faith communities in a common cause, with shared principles and a united voice. The Child Dignity Alliance was conceived precisely for that purpose. Born from the vision of the 2017 Vatican Congress and grounded in the shared commitments of the Declaration of Rome, it showed us what becomes possible when courage, compassion, and clarity come together. At a time when AI is outpacing regulation, when survivor care is siloed from safety design, and when children's voices are still often missing from the rooms where decisions are made, we need a central force to connect the dots. The Alliance can do just that. It can convene sectors that rarely speak to one another, coordinate resources across borders, and help elevate child dignity to the center of technological progress. What we need now is a moral infrastructure as agile and scalable as the digital tools being used to exploit children. We need a common compass, and we need to follow it together. Let us honor Pope Francis's legacy, not with platitudes, but with purpose. He taught us that dignity is not a principle we admire from afar. It is a duty we carry forward, especially for the youngest and most vulnerable among us. Together, we build a world where child silence is never mistaken for safety, where protection is not a privilege but a birthright, and where technology, for all its power, is never more powerful than our collective will to safeguard the innocent. Let us choose to act boldly, urgently, and together. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next few sessions will be a mix of presentations in person and online. So can I invite perhaps those that are present, Paula, Federico, and who else is present here? Edoardo. If you would like just to sit with me, so at least you're here and we don't disrupt anyone. Thank you. And I'm going to go through the order of the list. Thank you for changing the names and everything. And introduce Emilio Puccio, who I'm aware is online. And I also know that he's tried really hard to be here with us. And I know how much he cares about the work that Telefono Azzurro is doing on this cause, like everybody else. Emilio, I know you couldn't quite make it, so we're grateful that you are joining us online. Emilio Puccio is the Secretary General of the Intergroup on Children's Rights of the European Parliament. I'm not quite sure where you are around the world, but I know that you're quite mobile. You have, sadly, only 5 minutes, and I'm going to be very strict because it's very important that we all stick to our time. Paula, I know you're naughty. So, Emilio, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet, but I'm sure that we will any minute now.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me this year. Again, I am so sorry that I couldn't come. As you were saying in your introduction, unfortunately, I got held up here in Brussels. I'm actually back in Brussels, but most of the parliament is in Strasbourg. But it's a pleasure and a privilege always to be together with you guys and to share my reflections about this International Day. And I want to thank Professor Caffo for always having me and the other people who spoke before me. So I'm trying to bring a little bit of the perspective of the European Union, which has, I would say now with a sort of a hint of pride, the European Union has been at the forefront in the fight against child sexual abuse recently with 2 groundbreaking pieces of legislation. The EU is actually addressing child sexual abuse material in a very comprehensive way, both with a regulation that establishes specific rules to prevent and combat child sexual abuse. This is then regulatory framework that applies to the whole European Union single market. And again, I want to stress this even more, because we are talking about 450 million people. The EU as a whole, the 27 European Union member states as a whole, comprise 450 million, which also accounts for most of the 50% of the market share for many of the US-based companies that are like Meta and the rest. So this regulation is now on the table, which is unfortunately hasn't been passed yet, has the potential to really set an important precedent for the entire world. So also, as I said in my brief introduction, the EU is also dealing with this problem through the lenses of the criminal law. So we also came up with a specific criminal law tool, which is there was already a piece of legislation that was already in place, but back in 2011, and as also many of the people that spoke before me have already referred to. As we know now with the new technologies and the AI, generative AI, we had the feeling, of course, that we had to go and revise the Directive 92/2011 on combating the sexual abuse and sexual exploitation of children and child pornography. That was the title. And now this legislation is also on the table, and the Parliament has recently found and established finally a common text. So the objective of both these pieces of legislation is to harmonize and set common rules within the whole EU and all the European Union member states. So on the one hand, we have the Directive 92/2011, which, as I said, is a criminal law instrument, and is a reform of the EU criminal law framework. And again, this is taken into consideration what are the new threats coming from the new technologies. So for instance, this legislation contains a criminalization of the so-called pedophile handbooks, because unfortunately, like on the internet, there is a lot of information regarding how to actually be a good pedophile, how to groom people. So nowadays, after this new piece of legislation, for instance, we will criminalize this kind of material. Then another very important novelty that is included in this piece of legislation is, for instance, the extension of the statute of limitations. Another important point is the criminalization of solicitation aimed at committing child sexual abuse and exploitation offenses in the context of an online meeting. As we all know, unfortunately, child sexual abuse is not a new phenomenon. The thing is that now, with the internet and the ubiquity of the internet, the massive presence of the internet in the life of the kids, the internet is providing a sort of an endless pool of potential victims. And as we know, this is a trend that has been unfortunately increasing over the last few years. Perpetrators have gone to great length in order to recruit new victims, and they are present in all the platforms, and including video games that have been used by children. And so the criminalization of solicitation aimed at committing child sexual abuse and exploitation offenses in all the context of an online meeting is a very, very good important point that when this directive will be passed, is going to actually set an important precedent. So another criminalization, don't forget, I'm talking right now about the Directive 93/2011, which is the criminal law instrument. So those are a list of offenses which will be then criminalized in an harmonious and homogeneous way in all the European Union. We also have provided a definition of what is child sexual abuse in virtual reality settings. This legislation criminalizes as well live streaming. As we know, unfortunately, this is a very, very common phenomenon which spans entire continents, in fact, which allows perpetrators comfortably sitting in Europe or in North America to actually exploit through live streaming kids that are actually in other parts of the world, such as the Philippines and Southeast Asia and other parts of the world. So once again, the criminalization of live streaming here in the EU has the potential to have an important impact, a positive impact as well in the entire world, since it's going to curb this demand, which is unfortunately very much fueled by the North American and European demand. So this is again a criminal law instrument that has been put forward, and through these legislative reforms as well, AI-generated child sexual abuse material is going to be considered illegal on equal footing with the rest of the child sexual abuse. So the scope of this legislation is precisely to ensure that all the new forms of abuse, such as deepfake, CSI, AI-generated CSAM, is clearly criminalized across the all European Union member states. And there is as well a common definition throughout Europe. Then, as I said before, we also try to kind of tackle this problem through the lenses as well of the online world, and try to kind of tackle upstream the problem. Because, like I said before, unfortunately, this is not a new phenomenon. It's in fact a common phenomenon, as we all know here. But precisely the approach of the European Union has been very much to try and be as victim-centered as possible. And so that's why we came up with the proposal for a regulation to prevent and combat child sexual abuse, where we want to put the victims at the center. And so this proposal very much focuses and gives a lot of emphasis on removal of child sexual abuse material, but also what is actually very revolutionary is that for the first time ever, this legislation is going to be passed. It's going to be the first jurisdiction in the entire world to mandate. So we're going to move from a voluntary system to a mandatory system. So it's going to mandate through legal obligations all the online services providers that are offering a chat box that allow users, a non-user, to interact. So they allow potentially an adult to interact with a child, to respect a certain number of obligations. Among these, we have the legal obligation for the online services providers to detect child sexual abuse material, but also to report to the law enforcement authorities. And then once they receive a detection order from the law enforcement, so through a judicial authority, they will be obliged to remove the child sexual abuse material. And once again, the focus on removal is very important, because this is the only way that we have, the most powerful tool that we have at hand to ensure that we're going to give back children control to their life and give that back their agency. So I want you guys to think of it as a sort of a reparation, actually the most important reparation that can be done to victims who are victims of this very, very awful crime. But so, in order to just be within the time frame that has been allocated to me, I also wanted to say that once again, and I very much want to kind of join the call of Baroness Shields, this problem is a societal problem which requires a whole society approach. I mean, I am very, very happy of the leadership of the European Union. I'm very proud of the leadership that has been taken by the European Union. And again, just because this has the potential to really set an important precedent. Again, we are talking about 450 million citizens, And again, the European Union accounts for one of the highest percentage of the market share of those media companies. So through these legal obligations, companies will be then obliged to do this detection and to do as well the removal. However, as we know, Joanna said that the AI is outpacing regulation. I want to say that these pieces of legislation in the European Union are as much as future-proof as possible. And the way is because these legislation are designed in such a way where we want to leave a certain space for innovation to allow actually companies to be, in a way as well, innovative, but innovative in finding solutions to prevent this phenomenon from happening in the first place. And these pieces of legislation also have to be read in conjunction to other pieces of legislation that have been already passed in the European Union. I'm thinking, for instance, about the AI Act of the European Union, the Digital Services Act. So the whole architecture that is behind these pieces of legislation is that we want to tackle this problem upstream. We want to tackle the infrastructure that has enabled this phenomenon to scale up and to reach the skyrocketing figures that we are actually looking at right now. And so what I can tell you to conclude is that we need to ensure, and that's actually the approach that has been taken in the European Union, that in this race for progress, for technology developments, for AI, we ensure that children are not going to be a mere collateral to this race of the progress. And in fact, as a sort of an external, negative externalities that we have to accept in order to get progress. Because the solution is technological. AI has to be designed in such a way that has to integrate safety by design tools. And that's actually the approach that the European Union has taken. And I can assure you that with the Intergroup on Children's Rights, which is now the biggest intergroup in the entire European Parliament, comprising 155 members spanning from all different European Union member states and different political groups, will ensure that children are definitely not going to be a collateral. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the clear overview and explaining so well what the legislation is aiming to do. I would like to move on to our next speaker, Fabiola Palomares, from Eurochild, who is a Senior Policy and Advocacy Officer on online safety. She's also linking with us online. Over to you, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me and see me, hopefully.
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much to Mr. Caffo and also Telefono Azzurro for inviting Eurochild, because for us it's a true honor to be able to speak to you today in such a landmark date. For those of you who don't know, Eurochild is the biggest child rights organizations network in Europe. And we have members such as Telefono Azzurro, who do amazing work at national level across 42 European countries. So we're quite widespread, and we work here in Brussels to put children's rights at the core of the EU policy agenda. And I first want to briefly set the scene a little bit of the scale and the rapid evolution of this crisis. And I'm sure you've already heard quite a lot of numbers, but I just wanted to mention that the Internet Watch Foundation, which is the biggest hotline in Europe, received in 2024 one report every 74 seconds. That's a bit more than a minute. And from those reports, one every 108 seconds, less than 2 minutes, showed a child being sexually abused. So it seems quite clear at this point that digital environments do fuel online harm, child sexual abuse and child sexual abuse related types of harm, including, as was very, very much mentioned here today, AI-generated abuse material. They allow for constant re-victimization of children suffering abuse. The images and videos depicting the abuse of a child might stay online for decades. And even when they manage to take them down, they keep being re-uploaded. Digital environments also fuel the extension of this crime because they enable new forms of child sexual abuse, as it was mentioned before with AI-generated CSAM, but also make it easier for perpetrators to reach children anonymously, as we're seeing with end-to-end encrypted environments. And contrary to popular belief, CSAM is easily accessible on the open web. You don't have to go to the dark web anymore to find it. And particularly on pornography and social media sites. 77% of surveyed offenders by Protect Children Finland encountered CSAM on the open web. So that's quite a big percentage. But it doesn't have to be this way. The scale, the severity, and the fast evolution of the crime can be addressed with a comprehensive solution at EU level, and one that obliges online platforms to assume the responsibility for hosting and also fueling this crisis. And thank you very much, Emilio. I don't know if you're still online, but thank you for that brief introduction to the EU's approach, because that means that I can delve directly into detail. Later this month, it will be 3 years since the European Commission proposed a regulation to oblige companies to detect, remove, and report online child sexual abuse in their services. And up to date, 3 years after, Italy and other member states have not been able to found an agreement. From our perspective, member states are failing children who are increasingly exposed to the risk of being sexually abused online, and they're failing victims who during years have been struggling to delete the images and the videos of their sexual abuse from the internet. With a lack of a clear commitment that we're seeing, many member states have not shown the bravery needed to effectively protect children. This bravery passes for defending the protection and the privacy of children and victims too, whose not only safety but also privacy are fundamentally breached when suffering child sexual abuse online. So we're calling on Italy and all member states to stand up for children and survivors. Italy has been an ally since almost the beginning when this proposal was presented by the Commission, and we need that push to continue. We need to establish a strong legal framework to combat child sexual abuse online that operates both in the short and in the long term. And that means including voluntary and mandatory mechanisms to detect, report, and remove child sexual abuse online. A solely voluntary system as we have now wouldn't be enough. It would create unequal standards of protection for children because only some companies would detect if they would. And a solely mandatory system wouldn't allow for the innovation and the flexibility that we actually need to be able to tackle a crime that evolves almost every single day. We also need that prevention element to remain the cornerstone of the regulation. It's crucial that, along with other regulations and policies that have been already adopted in the EU, such as the Digital Services Act, that we continue to make these platforms safer from the beginning to ensure that we're also preventing this crime from happening in the first place. And it's crucial that the regulation establishes a strong EU center that breaks, the dependence that we already have with the US, especially with the reporting center in the US, which is called NCMEC. Now we completely rely on them in terms of reporting material to law enforcement and also the identification of victims and children who are at risk of suffering. Europol is doing an amazing work, and Interpol a little bit too, on this, but we need a strong EU center that can support the identification of victims, but also the innovation and foster new solutions and new technologies that could prevent and identify victims and perpetrators. And we know we're asking for a lot. This is a very big and a very complex task. But as Emilio very well said, we have an opportunity here, and the EU could become the first jurisdiction to properly put the responsibilities on the companies and the online platforms who are creating and enabling this environment in the first place. And the risk of not reaching an agreement on this proposal after 3 years of negotiations remains very high. The implications of not reaching an agreement could be unprecedented. The only reason why NCMEC uncovered 100 million pieces of child sexual abuse material in 2023 is because online platforms are actually detecting it in their services. There is very little that actually comes from reporting by children or by hotlines or helplines. And without allowing this detection to continue, we're going to leave just millions of children completely unprotected from rampant sexual abuse online. And on top of this, we're seeing a worrying change of paradigm in the US, with quite a lot of platforms actively deflecting their moderation responsibilities and lowering the bar substantially in terms of moderation commitment. And for example, over the last 2 years, Meta's reporting of sexual extortion to NCMEC has gone from submitting reports within days of an incident to reporting them over a month after the sexual extortion of the child has taken place. So we're seeing that companies are shifting a little bit because also the bar of responsibility has been lowered in the US. And we cannot allow that to affect children living in Europe. We must protect our children. And with this, I promise I'll finish. Italy is bound by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, as was introduced earlier in the session today. And that means that it's not only the responsibility of Italy, but it's also the opportunity that Italy has to push the EU to be a global leader on the protection of children online from child sexual abuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabiola. Very powerful speech. And also thank you for linking it to Italy as well. So our next speaker, also online, Kona Dana Humaid. He's one of the founding members and the president of the Interfaith Alliance for Safer Communities and Director General of the International Affairs Bureau, Minister of Interior of the United Arab Emirates. Welcome. I hope you can hear us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, my love. I'm so inspired. I've been on the session since the beginning. I just want to start by telling Professor Cavo that I've always admired his convening power, and he can bring us all together to speak passionately and freely without sponsorship, censorship about our views and our experiences. So I've had my notes prepared, but I'm going to change it a little bit. I've heard everybody speaking, my idol, Ernie Allen, Emilio, Professor Cavo, Prime Minister of Italy. So I decided to change it a little bit and provide you with an insight from all the stakeholders in the circle I work with. So just a bit of an introduction, just a simple introduction. So I'm a police officer by day, working in child protection. I'm also the president of an interfaith organization. I'm part of multiple expert groups that are either law enforcement, legislators, faith, or industry. So I will tell you what I learned in the past 6 months. I will just tell you what I learned in the past 6 months. Number one, working with children during the GNRC meeting with Arigato, we hosted around 70 children from 34 countries. Some of the insights they had on sexual exploitation of children online were eye-opening. For example, they want us to acknowledge child-on-child offending. They feel that it has been growing in the previous few years, and it is something that we need to look into and try to work around to find solutions for perpetrators that are not adults. There are some young, elder children that are performing unfortunately, the abuse and the sextortion. So one insight from them. Number two, they want to highlight the importance of working with artificial intelligence, with working with technology, with being on social media platform. It helps them with their education. It helps them with the social activities. It helps them with all of this. So they want to be protected, but not stifled. They want to be protected, but not held away from all those platforms that they have grown to use for their daily life. I'm happy to report that the United Arab Emirates announced yesterday that artificial intelligence and the importance of artificial intelligence and protection online from artificial intelligence will be introduced from 2026 to ages 5 to 18 in schools. It will be part of the curriculum. It's something that we all worked on, and we listened to the children when they were in Abu Dhabi, and we tried to reflect it in our curriculum. So moving from children and their messages, let's talk about law enforcement. Unfortunately, most of the budgets and focus of law enforcement lies in investigation, unfortunately. And this is something that I'm happy to report from all the expert groups, from Interpol and all the expert groups of law enforcement officers that I work on across Amiripol, Afripol, ASEANPol, and other organizations. I think police officers, and we agree on that, should allocate more on prevention and early detection. I think this is something that we need to do. However, we also need some support from industry. I think voluntary principles are no longer sufficient enough for us. I think mandatory principles should be put in place. And I think Fabiola talked about how if we maintain the voluntarily principles, we are not going to have adequate protection of children around the world in different areas of the world. I'm happy to report that us, through my team's work, we've managed to train 100 officers in the Philippines that are dealing with tens and thousands of NECMEC reports monthly. We managed to train them. And it took us few weeks of training for 100 officers. But what made a difference is 15 used laptops that were programmed to help them use AI in their investigations. It doesn't take much to help countries that need technology and need training. Sometimes use devices, sometimes some of your time that you have to raise awareness is important. Please make yourselves available. It doesn't take much. They'll take care of all the logistics. But if you make yourself available for many countries, you will be able to help them with minimum effort, but you need to do more. Law enforcement as well, one of the things that they are struggling with is the use of technology. We are working with AI for Safer Children and with UNICRI to introduce AI tools to more than 84 countries. However, there is a lot of struggle in terms of allocating budget to buy AI or to use technology in policing work. Unfortunately, budget cuts always goes to research, development, and technology. So that is the point of view from policing. Let's talk about legislators. So legislators, I've been in a group for the past 4 years working on introducing metaverse to policing and to policy and to strategy, only to find that AI has taken its place suddenly. So the shift in technology driven policies and laws and legislations is not as fast as the speed in which technology is developing and in which technology is spreading. This is something that is not a struggle only specific to the GCC region. This struggle is something that I've had the privilege of having very intimate conversations with legislators all around the world and a lot of expert groups. So more involvement of industry with legislators might help us. Also, if technology experts are part of legislators' groups, that will help a lot. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Another thing that comes to my attention is judges and prosecutors. So we don't have expert judges and expert prosecutors in areas of technology and in areas of cybercrime and crimes against children online. I've had a conversation with a judge who actually asked me with very good intention, do I judge with the intention of someone who created AI images of children that are not real, or do I judge the actual crime and the visibility of this crime of having no real victims in that case? This is a question that the judge asked me, wanting to know my expert opinion. Of course, my opinion is we judge based on intention, and these images online are a provocation of crime against children online. But in reality, those judges need a lot of training, and those legislators also need a lot of training and a lot of onboarding on a lot of technologies that are spreading around the world. Again, victims. Those who know me know that I only want to deliver the best that I can in terms of results. I was approached by a family of a girl that is about to get married. She's 26 years old. She has online sexual exploitation. She was a victim of online sexual exploitation 10 years ago. The family approached me asking me, can I make sure that those images are removed from the internet because she wants to start a new life? Unfortunately, my answer to them was no. And this is something that broke my heart. There is nothing I can do in terms of removal of images online. The images of those victims will stay online forever. There is none of us that can do anything to help them except to provide mental health support and to provide counseling. But in reality, those victims are victimized and re-victimized once and twice again. Now, NECMEC, I'm very grateful for NECMEC. NECMEC has changed the way we do business in the United Arab Emirates in terms of child protection. But my officers are exhausted with 15,000 to 20,000 reports monthly that they have to go through. Now, I can afford AI and they can use AI to go through all the images and files. Only 2%, almost 2%, 1.75%, 2% of cases are new cases. Most of the cases are legacy cases. And that should bring the light to mental health to everybody who is working in this space. Mental health of every single one of us working in this space is very important for our endearment and for us staying sustainable in this area, to not waste our experience by leaving the area too soon, because we are very exhausted mentally from the situation and from working in this area. I hope that I managed to bring the perspective of many stakeholder groups into a quick 5-minute speech. I'm available if anybody wants to collaborate. I'm available if you feel like a country needs training or a country needs onboarding to AI, or if you know of a country or a group of people that needs support from my side, whether it was as law enforcement or a faith-based organization, please let me know. My contact details are with Professor Cavo. I'm very happy to be of any help and any service. Thank you very much for the 5 minutes that I was given amongst those great minds and idols of mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I thank you for two different reasons. One, for your energy, because we worked together for many years, because we started together with Ernie at the beginning and after with Hans and together with Father Lombardi and Monsignor Sanchez Orondo, this process. We build the Child Dignity Alliance, we build a wonderful events in Abu Dhabi, and I know that you're so engaged in many activities. We did so many activities to the World Economic Forum, and I think that your passion is absolutely for us very crucial, as we share in many occasions, too recently in December with Elena too in Abu Dhabi. I think it's the moment to connect all our energy to build a strategy together, utilizing the speech of the Pope Francis. And you know that he was very connected with this process because through you we build this interfaith alliance that is absolutely a crucial aspect in this international strategy. I think it's the moment to collaborate together and to have you in this process because your energy and your competence is absolutely special. And thank you a lot.
I am at your service, Professor Cavo, at your service.
No, I thank you, and I will see you very soon to Rome. I hope to in a short time for different events that will be happen in Italy and in Teolici in a few days. And I think can be a very important opportunity because to have you and other friends as Ernie, as Emilio and on board is absolutely very important, and I consider your energy absolutely central, and thank you.
Thank you also. Thank you from me as well. Very energetic talk, and that's what we need. So it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Robert Hoving, President of the In Hope. Robert, I hope you're connected with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today here in between all these esteemed speakers. I will give you a short presentation, not only from the In Hope perspective, because of course I'm president of In Hope, which is the global network of hotlines for child abuse material, but as well as president of the Dutch Safer Internet Center of Limits, one of the biggest safer internet centers there is in the European Union. And we are as well comprised of the preventative helpline Stop It Now. So that means we also look at the perpetrator side, which I think also gives wonderful insights on how to combat this heinous type of crime. And I'm going to now try and share my screen. Do you see my screen? If someone could just say a yes or no, because I only see my presentation now.
Online, yes.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to start. So Off Limits, like mentioned, we have both the hotline and the helpline, which I think is crucial because a hotline is of course logical that there are the reports from the In Hope network, the reports of CSAM. But at the helpline, we of course have the victims calling us or chatting with us themselves that have become a victim. And if they're below 18, it is of course still CSAM when their images are online. And next to that, we have, of course, the preventative helpline, Stop It Now, like I mentioned, for the people who watch this type of material. And therefore, I think that the Safer Internet Center is crucial in combating this fight, helping children, but also making sure that images do go offline. I think that a Safer Internet Center, they provide the first aid for online accidents. They are the ones who get the reports in, can liaise with law enforcement. They get the young people calling them. They can provide them proper help. They can send out requests for removal. But especially, they are the canary in the digital coal mine. Back in the day, we had a canary with which you would go into the coal mines, and when the canary would die, we would know the oxygen would be out. So it was an early warning sign. And I think that is especially the role for young children of the Safer Internet Centers. We asked AI, how does a canary in a digital coal mine look? And this is what ChatGPT gave us back, because you understand that AI plays a much bigger role in our work. Also important for my perspective is the fact that the Dutch hotline was founded by the sector itself in 1995. And now it grew out to the center, 50 amazing people who wake up every day to keep the online world in the Netherlands safe by sending out requests for takedown, by liaising with education, by liaising with help organizations, but also always on a daily basis at the table with the sector, the hosting sector, but also the very large online platforms, to collaborate with them and keeping the internet a safe space. And as a canary in the coal mine, I want to share a few things which worry me, both as president of InHope, but also as president of Limits, the most. The first is the self-generated material. It was already mentioned by previous speakers, but the Dutch hotline, as our hosting sector is so prevalent in the Netherlands, we also receive a lot of reports. But of all the illegal reports coming in, a third was self-generated, meaning young children, either groomed or any other reason, making the pictures themselves. But of those reports, 75% was prepubescent, implying that this was children roughly under 10.5 years old. So we are starting now a research together with both law enforcement, but also with child psychologists, to what is going on here. Because why do young children have this behavior? Because psychologists told us that it's not only because of grooming, but it might as well be because of neglect at home or by any other reason. So it is very important, before we make legislation, before we form how do we combat this, that we actually know what is going on here, and that we know why these young children, and we have the facts, are making these pictures of themselves. And after that, that those pictures, of course, go online. When we look at the helpline, we help people of all ages, but the main people calling us are, of course, young people, which is logic because their world is intertwined with the digital world. But as you can see, most of the people reaching out to us has to do with sexual transgressive behavior, either being sextortion or the unintentionally spread of their intimate photos and videos. And there, as well with the CSAM images, we see the amount of AI images going up. At the hotline, it has already become extremely difficult. We think last year we saw 1,300 images which were either 100% or partially made by AI, but we don't know anymore. At the helpline, it was around 55 images of which we know, and of which also the people calling us telling us it was AI. But also there, even though it is AI, it has exactly the same effects in the offline world. And like I mentioned, as of Limits, we collaborate very closely. We are a trusted flagger at both the help and the hotline. We collaborate very closely with the whole sector, and we work with them in a very happy and professional way. When we go to the prevention helpline, so this is Stop It Now, being the helpline for people watching this material and reaching out for help. We did a research with the Dutch National Rapporteur on Trafficking Human Beings and Sexual Violence Against Children, and we did a research into who is calling us there. And what came out, and it was also already mentioned beforehand, more than half of the people calling us at Stop It Now are males under 26, and they have come here because of escalation behavior, because at a too young age, they've gone online, saw very harmful content, for instance, sexual, pornographic content, and got desensitized. And because they look for heavy material to get the same level of satisfaction, they look for CSAM. And what one of our previous speakers also said, indeed, we did another research, that's the research in blue on the left, within 4 clicks from a regular porn site, and I think we still need to have the conversation as Europeans, what we think is a regular adult website, and when should you, how do you introduce young people to that? But that's another other discussion. However, these young people can find this type of material within 4 clicks, just by the way the internet is built. So we know that even though they are not looking for it, they will come across it. And we also know from research that being exposed to it once can already have effects that you want to look for it more often. And it causes PTSS. Because from this, I also want to take the step back to the other platforms. This is adult websites with which we also work together to protect minors. But when we look at all these app groups, albeit WhatsApp groups, albeit Telegram groups, in which young children are with a lot of people they don't know, and everything that is being shared there, from violence, from the war, from animal cruelty, from adult content, it desensitizes and all desensitizes young people. And all these young people are watching this material. Because if you don't watch it, your classmates will tell you, but you don't dare to look at it. We all looked at it. And when I talk to children, it scares me how normal it is for them to look at material of which I think, as a 43-year-old, I don't even want to see this. For what a safer internet center is also very important is advocacy. Seeing where does the law or the enforcement of that law, where are gaps that can ensure that children are not protected, which is also something we do a lot in the Netherlands. It can be the Telegram. We were the first helpline and hotline that became an official trusted flagger after we took them, after we sent out enforcement requests. It can be to pornographic sites who don't host consent of all the people. To now, we have authorities in the Netherlands. We have a privacy authority. We have the digital markets coordinator. We have an authority on terroristic content and child abuse material. But we need to enforce the rules and the legislations that we have to take the images offline. Because if you don't enforce it by a government body that, for instance, can sanction even personally owners of these sites, it is very difficult to take the images offline. Now, my last worry, this is a few steps back, but what is happening in the world and how big tech and technology is becoming intertwined with certain states that might think differently about human values and about democratic institutions. Today there was in the news that Meta fired another 2,000 people in Spain who do the moderation. So the moderating of harmful content which influences young people, as I mentioned earlier, is going down. And that's why I said this is going to be a long run, but children can be influenced a lot by harmful content. They can also be influenced by strange opinions on sexuality, on the LGBTQ+ community, but also, influenced by propaganda about legislation, about what is real news, what is fake news. And for me, like I said, it's a big step, but for me, what's a worry? Young children are being influenced, but these young children are the voters of the future, and they will be the politicians of the future who will make new legislation to protect children online. And I think that whole holistic approach on both the European level, but especially on the national level, is something in which a safer internet center and everything that has been put in place for those to work by the European Commission is crucial in protecting young children online. And I want to thank you very much for your attention. And this was my contribution. I think I made it in the set minutes.
Thank you, Robert. I know it's a big ask to say so much in a very short space, so I really appreciate your timing. And I think your presentation links beautifully well with the next one of Jacqueline Boucher from the Global Head of Platform Safety at SNAP. I believe she's with us as well.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm going to try to present my screen. I'm not the best at Zoom, but I will certainly try. Are you able to see the screen?
Just 1 second. It will take a few more seconds for us to be able to... Yes, it works perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you. Sorry that I can't be there in person, but I'm happy to deliver some remarks here virtually. So I'd like to first start by saying what I'm going to talk about, and I will try to be brief. I'd like to take everyone through the dimensions of child sexual exploitation and abuse online that all platforms see who have certain capabilities. I'd like to share with you some cross-industry research that we do at SNAP that I think is particularly illustrative of what we've been discussing today. And then I'd like to take you through SNAP's response to child sexual exploitation and abuse broadly. So first of all, I think we all know about imagery. That's what the majority of the folks have been talking about today. But we're also faced with sextortion. We're faced with sexual attention that young people are receiving via conversations and solicitation. There, of course, is grooming for sexual purposes. Some apps, not Snapchat, offer live streaming capabilities, and we are seeing on-demand child sexual exploitation and abuse. There is child sex trafficking, and so much starts with the ill-advised behaviors of sexting and sharing nudes. So at SNAP, we do some landscape research each year into a variety of risks that young people can face online. We call it our annual Digital Wellbeing Index, and all of the results are released annually on International Safer Internet Day. I've given you the link here, values.snap.com, and you'll be able to find all of the research. The latest installment was released on Safer Internet Day this year on February the 11th, and you'll see that it's about an 89 slide deck. So I've tried to consolidate a couple of slides here that I think are useful. This is research that we do of 13 to 17-year-olds, 18 to 24-year-olds, and parents of 13 to 19-year-olds in 6 countries: Australia, France, Germany, India, the UK, and the US. And we are asking young people about the risks that they've been exposed to. If a parent comes online and wants to take the research, take the study and the poll, we ask them if they have a young adult, 13 to 19-year-olds, in their house, and would they like them to take it. So this is the interesting piece of research that I'd like to share. Parents are largely able to predict that their young people are going through some kind of a risk online. So you'll see in this bar chart on the left that parents of 13 to 19-year-olds said, yep, I think about 72% of them said, I think my kid has been through something online ever in terms of a risk. And the age of the 13 to 17-year-olds, in fact, 73% of them had been exposed to something in just the previous 3 months to this research. So you'll see that when it comes to this kind of predictability, parents have that in them. So they tell us that either they have figured it out for themselves that their teen was going through something, the teen had come to them, or they'd been told by someone else. Now, there's a blind spot, couple of blind spots for parents. This is when it comes to exposure to any type of intimate imagery online and any type of exposure to grooming for sexual purposes online. You'll see with any intimate imagery, we asked young people if they've been exposed to intimate imagery in the last 3 months. We asked parents of those teenagers, do you think your teens have ever been exposed to sexual imagery? 15 percentage point gap. That is statistically significant and represents a tremendous opportunity for us to be able to make sure that parents view their teens, view their younger adults as sexual beings. That might just be a reflection of the kind of risks that we're talking about, because parents don't want to see their young people in this kind of capacity. And the same is said for grooming, where there was a 12-point gap. So I would also like to share a little bit about people's lack of awareness and low knowledge about the illegalities of sexual imagery when it comes to minors. And of course, this is across all platforms, all services, all devices. This is not just Snapchat. This is industry-wide collective research. So only 1 in 4, so about 25%, say that they've ever seen AI-generated images that were of a sexual nature. And thankfully, only 2% said that they believe the person depicted in that imagery was under 18. We'd like to see that at 0, of course, but at least it is down to 2%. But what's a little bit more concerning is that when it comes to creating this fake sexual imagery, when it comes to retaining images of minors, viewing them, sharing them, even if they were intended as a meme or a joke, young people and adults and teens do not know 100% that this is illegal material, and it is illegal to engage in with this material in this way. So about 25% of all respondents across the board, across all of these topical areas, are not sure that this is in fact illegal. And in the US and India, these were markedly higher than some of the other countries. So you'll see that nearly 4 in 10 in the US believed that it was legal to use AI technology to create fake sexual imagery of a person. So again, both of these pieces of information represent opportunities for us to reach out and educate and reach out and engage. So when it comes to Snap's response, we are determined to make our platform a hostile environment for any type of illegal or violating activity. And we exercise a number of proactive and reactive measures to inform, as we do with this research, and to fight back against the most egregious harms on the platform, including, of course, child sexual exploitation and abuse. So we're conducting this research, which we just went into, and I would flag for you that we did release some specific statistics about sextortion and some other specific findings around the AI-generated material later last year. We have zero tolerance policies, and this is across all dimensions of child sexual exploitation and abuse. It is prohibited by our platform. We're using photo DNA, as most platforms are, to determine if we have duplicates of known illegal photos circulating on the platform. We're doing the same with Google's CSAI match for known illegal videos. And we are starting to use Google's Content Safety API for that new, never before hashed imagery in public surfaces to see if we have any of that circulating online. And Google's technology gives us a rendering as to whether there is a high, medium, or low probability of certain imagery being illegal material. We're also using what we call behavioral signal-based detection to determine bad actors and violating accounts. We're trying to get upstream of the risk. Snap is quite a private platform for private messaging between one or two or small groups of people. So we really do rely on those individuals in those conversations to tell us when something is happening. But we're trying to move upstream to see if perhaps young people are interacting or being contacted by someone who's not in their friend group, or someone who has been blocked or reported by others, or someone who they don't have a lot of mutual friends in common with. And we're getting in front of those conversations and saying, hey, do you trust this person? Should you be accepting them as a friend, being that all of these factors might be relevant? We've always made blocking and reporting and removal tools available. We also have something that we refer to as our Family Center, which is a suite of tools and resources for parents and caregivers and trusted adults so that they can have a teen's back on Snapchat, knowing who they're interacting with, while preserving the content of their conversations and thus young people's privacy at a very critical stage in their development. We're also engaged cross-industry and cross-sector. We participate in all of the major programs that are available for hash sharing, like NECMEC's Take It Down program, Report Remove out of the UK, and also the Technology Coalition's Lantern project. We're often invited to participate in academic studies with researchers and others. We also maintain the Safety Advisory Board of 19 experts from around the world. They represent about 12 different countries, and we always turn to them for all things safety. We also have a teen council that we started last year, and we have just extended teen councils across Europe. And we have a teen council now in Australia. Those invitations to participate in those expansion cohorts just went out last week or the week before, and we are accepting those acceptances back so that we can kick those cohorts off as well. We support law enforcement in their investigations and their efforts to bring bad actors to justice. And we are always trying to raise awareness of these critical issues in our app, on our platform, across our website, and with opportunities like this to provide educational resources to young people, their parents, and other trusted adults. I would just ask you to keep in mind that these are whole of society issues that we're dealing with, and everyone plays a role. There are no silver bullets, unfortunately, technological or otherwise. So we all need to be in this together. Again, raising awareness, educating, and of course, thoughtful regulation is welcome that really seeks to address the harms that we are facing and young people are facing online. With that, thank you so much for the opportunity. And a good day.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you for sharing this presentation. And I think we all agree that there's no such a thing as a silver bullet, and we all have to come in together to be able to fight this cause. I think your presentation will link really well with our last speaker from the remote side, Carolina Cristofoletti, who I had the pleasure to meet at Stanford University last year, or a year and a half ago. Time flies. Carolina is an independent expert of child sexual abuse, material and exploitation. Over to you, Carolina, and nice to see you again.
Thank you very much. So sorry, I'm on mobile, so I won't be able to join on video, but I just want to let a small contribution of mine here. So when we talk about child sexual abuse materials recently, we hear a lot talking about AI, and I think moving this discussion forward, it's super important for us to kind of try to understand with research and all this partnership of these different stakeholders that we have here to understand what is actually going on, how do criminals succeed in actually generating this kind of images, even without all the guardrails we have already implemented. And something I think it's very important to mention that, yes, we haven't touched in this panel today is the financial aspect of child sexual abuse materials. We have been seeing that since the 3 main CSAM forums on the dark web have been shut down or either closed their doors, we have been seeing a bunch of threat actors locating to more commercial environments where they kind of feel more protected. So I think this is a very important challenge moving forward that we need to address. And of course, counting with the contribution of you all to actually join this fight and create the necessary prevention measures for this landscape as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking here today.
Thank you. Carolina, can we move to the next speaker in that case? I would like to introduce our next speaker, who I had a pleasure to chair not very long ago, Federico Becchetti. So Federico is a Chief Commissioner of the State Police, the National Crime Centre for Combating Online Child Pornography, Child Sexual Abuse materials. And I'm fully aware of your work internationally with other police forces, including the Metropolitan Police and Scotland Yard. So thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Professor Caffo, for the invitation. Thank you for the introduction. I will start saying that today is basically the National Day dedicated to celebrate what we are doing every day as our work. It's a curious coincidence that it comes right after the Labour's Day on the 1st of May, saying basically, go get back to work, there's a lot to do. And I will not repeat what previous speakers said about how this phenomenon increased over time. we are fully aware of that, and I would rather tell you how my unit and me and my colleagues are trying to face this challenge of increasing cases of CSAM and how to increase the investigation. So we basically had to find a way to prioritize cases, because we wanted to make sure that among the 100 of cases we received as reports and referrals daily, we want to make sure that we can find those that are more delicate and might hide ongoing abuses. So I would like to share with you what it means to be officer working in this area. Also, I forgot to say something. I would like also to express my I was happy to see this title. The title, Silence Does Not Protect. Finally, when I introduce myself to someone who knows I work in the police, I tend to say I just work in cybercrime, because I don't want to expose the other person to the idea of what I'm actually doing. And looking at this title, it made me rethink how actually this is part of this process, and how we should actually try to stop it and try to speak more of this topic and make sure everybody is aware of what is going on around, and there is nothing to hide. So for this reason, I also would like to share with you how officers like me and my colleagues are trying to face this challenge, not only viewing the material and not only assessing what is illegal and what is not, but we are analyzing and we are assessing each case from a quantity perspective, from a quality perspective, and with a very in-depth research about suspects using OSINT techniques. We basically want to make sure that our suspect is possibly has more risk to reach out to children. As I said, we receive countless referrals, and we need to find a way to make sure that those referrals that are more urgent does not pass overlooked. So quantity, some referrals contains more material, more elements than others, and this is for us, of course, the most easy hint to how to process a case in a rush. But then there's also quality, and here I also want to spend a few words, because as I said, the work of our colleagues and I is not only checking if something is illegal or not. We are trying to profile the person from the suspect from the content the content that is shared. From that point of view, we try to understand. I will make a very immediate example. If the content display infants abuses, then for us it's a priority. And of course, it has to be prioritized for compared to other cases where, for example, the threshold of minor or not minor, because when minors get closer to 18 years old, the threshold is very difficult to understand. So that's something I wanted to say about how we are trying to comply with this increase of referrals. About the legal frameworks, I would like to spend a few words. How much time I have? Like 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Okay, well, I'll try to make it quick. So right now the legal framework is complicated. We have this interim regulation which allows provider to voluntarily report referrals to law enforcement, but this interim regulation will no longer be applicable in less than a year. So here, I think in this day, it's worth reminding our authorities that we have to provide a strong legal framework that, along with the Digital Service Act, can help law enforcement to tackle this phenomenon in the right way. And for this, we, as a law enforcement, provided a lot of insight to the European Commission, saying how we would like this new regulation which is coming, how we would like to be structured, so that it allows us to combat this phenomenon in a right way. What is a right way for us? Also forward-looking. What else? Then, of course, the Digital Service Act is, of course, a stable base, especially even if there are some challenges related to it. For example, sometimes providers, when they remove the content, they are actually giving a heads up to the suspect. And for us, this heads up means the investigation might be compromised. So we hope that this new regulation will fix this somehow, and we also hope to find over time better ways to so that providers can report this and allow us to finish our investigation without the investigation being compromised. I would like to also would like to welcome the announcement of Professor Caffo about Telefono Azzurro being a new flagger. And I hope this will step up our cooperation together, laying the base for new opportunities. Last, since it is the National Day for combating CSAM, when I looked at the title, I thought, okay, I want to bring up some ideas. I don't know if the email reached the personnel working for Telefono Azzurro, so if she can display it. I think the best way to reach out is to find a way that we can reach out saying without saying what we are doing. And this comes from my personal experience. When we were training with software dedicated for CSAM, we were not training with real CSAM. We want to avoid exposure, so we were training with tigers. Tigers were illegal material. And then I also mixed with my personal studies of computer forensics and file system, basically how a device stores information, which is like a huge library full of shelves, full of rows of shelves. So I thought, okay, why can't we realize a comic where we actually say what we are doing if we want to break this silence? Because then it would also help me to say what I do when people ask me. So thank you for the possibility to intervene in this very important day, and I will hand it over to Elena. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico, and thank you for all the work that you do to protect young people online. And I think what you've presented about CSAM and all the images link well with what Dr. Bradbury is about to present on nude image sharing. We've heard this morning quite a lot of discussion, particularly from Ernie Allen. He was presenting some really poignant data about how many images there are out there and how many are self-produced. So Dr. Bradbury, a subject expert at Resolver, and also a collaborator of the Center for Abuse and Trauma and Suicide Studies at Middlesex University. Over to you.
Thank you.
And I think we have some slides, I believe, that were sent in advance, if you don't mind sharing, so also our colleagues from online can see it. Thank you so much. Paula, that's you, I believe. Oh, is there... She's bringing it to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So, as a criminologist, I've been studying the phenomenon of adolescent nude image sharing, behaviour, the suitability of policy and practice, and would like to talk to you today about that topic, about motivation, risk and impact, and the involvement of AI. So essentially one of the questions is, why do adolescents share nudes? Well, there is a lot of complex factors behind it. One of the predominant ones is adolescent development itself, specifically neurological, social and emotional development, which play a significant role in the children's response to risk and decision making, specifically around sharing nudes. The internet provides an illusion of anonymity and amplifies online disinhibition, within which there are several factors that play an integral part. Curiosity. This could be sexual curiosity, but it also could be a physiological curiosity. Am I normal? Am I attractive? Do other people find me attractive or me likable, the way I present myself? Adolescents could be seeking relationships. I want to find somebody, a significant other to be with. There is an element of potentially boredom, loneliness, isolation. There was a considerable amount of that happened to a lot of young people during the pandemic, which thrust a lot of young people into online spaces seeking for that socialization at such a complex time in a person's life. We cannot ignore there is the fact of sexual arousal. There is a lot of hormones when you're an adolescent, and a lot of times you will be in the online spaces, clicking on things out of curiosity once again. There is also peer pressure. Well, everybody else is doing it, so I need to be doing it too to make sure that I fit in. Grooming and exploitation is by no means the last and the least of the issues which we need to talk about in relation to adolescent nude image sharing. A lot of the times within these spaces, adults be creating fake identities in order to groom children within lots of different types of apps and platforms to gain the trust in order to solicit nude image sharing from young people, which will end up being more of a coercive relationship to gain more images, which could then be distributed online or kept for personal gain. So I will briefly touch over this because I know we've actually, majority of the speakers here this afternoon have touched on this topic, the actual prevalence. I think some of the key take-home points about this is that with the data produced by the IWF, 92% of actioned web page reports contain self-generated nude imagery created by children, and that was within the age group of, when we look at 7 to 10-year-olds, they equated to 41% of that content. So this is a significant volume, and when we talk about conversations about online safety, this indicates that we need to be bringing those conversations earlier. If we're going to give children the ability to access the internet and not have the willingness to engage in, as parents and educators and policymakers, conversations around how safety and how online behavior and positive online behavioral modeling needs to exist, then we cannot expect them to move around in the darkness and without making mistakes. So we need to be having those conversations earlier. So one of the key points of the developing technology has been covered today already, that 1 in 10 minors, say peers, have used AI to generate nudes of other children. So I'm going to be touching on that a little more further on, but I wanted to introduce to you some research that I have conducted. So to develop a greater understanding of why adolescents share nude, it's essential to put children's voices at the heart of research. Therefore, as a part of my research, I examined 50 children's accounts of their experiences of sharing nudes and their concerns and how it's had an impact on them. Of course, there is research that shows that a lot of children do not always have negative impacts or concerns regarding it, but these were specifically posts with children who were concerned about the experiences they had had. So the research revealed that the motivation behind sharing nudes was predominantly around sexual arousal. The second most common was about the anonymity that the internet provided. But it was okay because you couldn't see my face, so I didn't think I'd get into trouble. And I could also pretend to be an older character with a different age. That was some of the factors behind the anonymity. The next common was a romantic relationship, followed by grooming at 10%, and then 8% peer pressure and 6% loneliness. These are just some of the quotes mentioned by children within these references to their experiences. Their response to their sharing of nudes that they revealed was the predominant amount revealed that they had felt a sense of anxiety, stupidity, regret. But then what was more concerning was there was a significant volume of children that said that they had suicidal or self-harm ideologies. And a lot of those stemmed around believing that upon the realization that they'd committed a criminal offence through sharing and distributing a sexual image of a minor, which even though it was themselves, they believed that, is my life over? Am I going to be arrested? And they had all these concerns. And this led to a lot of discussion around suicide, shame, depression, and feel like they've been violated or taken advantage of. The greatest fears after sharing nudes that they were going to be in trouble with the police and get investigated. The fear of manipulation or coercion, whether this would have an impact on the future and whether they could be identified by others like their peers or family. When we look at contributing factors that led to the sharing of nudes, 67% said they shared nudes because they didn't even realise that it was illegal to do so. They didn't realise that what they were doing was wrong, because a significant volume of them that talked about their experiences were aged sort of 16, and they believed because they were a legal age to consensually have sex, like for example in the UK, they believed that just sharing an image would be perfectly legal because it can't be as, it's offline, it's less risky. So those were some of the concerns, and that developed straight into the considerations of consent. So 16 were confused about what consent means, especially when it comes down to digital imagery. And even though I know we've talked about AI, but when we talk about the 1 in 10 minors say peers have used AI to generate nudes of other children, it's important to consider that these risks have diversified again. With the advent of artificial intelligence, we now have the capability to produce hyper-realistic images. All these images before you now, they are all created of children using AI. So this is the type of hyper-realistic images that are being created. The creation of deepfake nudes no longer requires advanced technology and training. Anyone can create them at any age, just from their personal mobile device, using an app. And as was mentioned before, this poses significant risk in relation to legislation and also the well-being of children. So just to sum up, because I'm aware of time, and I do tend to go on in general, but ways in which we need to think of ways in which we can help children to stay safe online. Well, one of the first things we do is children are calling out for behaviour modelling. What does good look like? How do I stay safe? What's a healthy way of interacting with others? Children are really keen to have these questions and have conversations about this. Working with subject matter experts, partnership, multi-agency partnership is essential for making change. Everybody in the same room, like we are doing today, talking about what's happening, what can we do to make a difference, and it starts here. Calling for accountability as well, moderation, that's important, and that's coming in with things like, like the advent of the Online Safety Act, the Digital Services Act, and the evolving AI Act are all pivotal changes in that. Reviewing legislation. Is our legislation keeping up with behaviour? Is it encapsulating or is it potentially criminalising children? We need children to talk about that with professionals and practitioners. Children need to know how to report, set privacy settings, and parents need to have an understanding of what the risks are in order to be able to have these conversations for children. Because the worst case scenario is children are in the shadows, are not there to be able to come forward and seek support. So but thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paula. As an advocate of research and data, I really welcome to hear also what children are saying and their voices at the heart of our discussion. So last but not least, Eduardo Garcia Roland, from a leading organization, UNICEF, on nutrition and early childhood development in emergencies. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Martelloso and Professor Caffo for the invite and for having this opportunity of being here. Just let me start first for acknowledging where we are, if you don't mind. We are in the Presidenza del Consiglio dei Ministri d'Italia, so I think it's important that every one of us recognize where we are, and also the quality is not the word, but I'm going to use it. The quality of the colleagues and friends that have also intervened today. I am just amazed by many of the presentations. Many of you, I learned a lot today, but also I can see the passion for your work, which I've been very impressed, but also the potential of changes. We have policymakers, we have lawmakers, we have law enforcing agents. The interfaith partners are absolutely not only touching, but an incredible source for change. And I think it's very important we acknowledge that. And I have to thank you, every one of you, for that, because I'm so enlightened by all your work and your research. I learned several things from you, Professor. So thank you for that. So I've been working in emergencies for more years than I want to admit. And I've been invited here, and I'm hoping to have our experience on the humanitarian world, on the torn, war-torn and emergency-torn countries, that experience to help also to advance in the digital space. And I will tell you exactly why, and I think there are a lot of similarities that I want to mention as quickly as I can. But first of all, I want to say, I will end with a very positive message. Ernesto, you know me. There is a very positive message, despite the title of the day, to talk about pedophilia and pedopornography. I think I have a very positive message to end up with. But until then, just bear with me through a couple of ideas and experiences of the last years. The first thing I have to say is a lot of our situations and the situations we live in our personal and communal worlds are due to lack of imagination. And I think lack of imagination is one of the big problems we have. In 1999, in April 1999, the 20th of April 1999, there were 2 children who killed 13 kids and wounded another 23. It was the shooting of Columbine, the school of Columbine. The mother of one of these children, Dylan's mom, whose name was Sue Klebold, wrote a book about the reckoning of a mother, I think it was the name, a mother's reckoning, of just dealing with this lack of imagination, if you allow me to say that, how it was inconceivable for her that her wonderful 17-year-old Dylan was going to do such a thing. In 2002, so a few years later, I was living in West Africa, and there was a series of conflicts there, and there was a report in February 2002 talking about sexual abuse of children committed by humanitarian workers. And I have to say, when that happened, a little bit before it went out, it was leaked. It was done by Save the Children and OCHA, which is the UN Agency for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. When it came up, I couldn't believe it. Lack of imagination. I couldn't believe that my community, the humanitarian workers who were there to protect children, to provide for children, were actually the culprits of the most heinous crimes that I could think about, that I'm sure Federico knows a lot about them. But there was like, how is it possible that my people, my friends, are able to do that? They were so involved in that. I have to say, I was in pure denial. In the beginning I said, oh, this is not possible, you know, they are exaggerating. Well, the report came out and the scale was truly shocking. There were more than 70 perpetrators involved of the biggest NGOs, including the one I was working with. More than 40 victims, all of them children, 48 agencies involved, and there were egregious abuses in a horrendous scale. And the other interesting thing is that there were actually sexual favors that children were provided in exchange of things they have the right to, and they were desperate for. Biscuits, water, main simple 8 things that they needed. Some of them had reported even they had to provide sex for drivers just to go from one place to the next. This scale of the horrors, it was in several refugee camps in several countries, hundreds of miles away. So it was really, so what happened then? So the report came out, and that was 23 years ago, and the world today is in the humanitarian sphere has completely changed. That was, I will say, the first time that we broke the silence, because it was not helping. I'm sure it was happening before. We broke the silence. And that created, especially there was, I think, I will say, the main, to say something positive, the biggest achievements were on prevention. They were on prevention. So right now, if you talk to any humanitarian worker, UN international civil servant like myself, all of us, we have passed through mandatory trainings. We know that this is feasible. There is all these watch outs for what is actually very feasible. You cannot say it's, we cannot have lack of imagination. We know it can happen. And there has been, most of the agencies have created their own code of conducts that have completely changed the way we do things. There has been much more transparency. Hiding things doesn't help anyone. It has been much more transparency. We have regular reporting. We have even, in UNICEF, we have a whole team dealing with this. We created a whole team, and we receive regular reportings if there has been abuses or not only sexual abuse by humanitarian workers externally, but also abuse of authority internally, all really very much related, I would say. So that has really improved a lot, but I have to say a little bit of shame on us. The good message is at the end, but we have to go through also mixed messages in the meantime. In just a few months, immediately they responded, they created a commission to work on this. In October, there was another report that they said it was not widespread. The abuses were not widespread. That actually created also a lot of problems, because obviously there was a lot of accuses of they are downgrading this. They're watering down the importance of heinous crimes. And that, what happened with the victims, what happened with the children that were abused. It's not very clear. Neither of those victims in 2002 were actually compensated. And actually, I will say many of them were re-victimized. And we have heard a lot about re-victimization today and the lingering of images and abuses online, because there was not a real acknowledgement. And if there is not a real acknowledgement, there's not going to be any kind of justice, I will say. And for the perpetrators, those humanitarian workers, there was not any persecution, criminal persecution, which absolutely is wrong, as we very much know. And there were only minor punishments, I will say. A few people lost their jobs. There were peacekeeping operations that were sent home, etc., etc. Since then, as I said, in the last 23 years, the enthusiasm to cut this has been very, very high. Prevention has been very strong. There has been few, I'm not going to diminish it. There have been scandals since 2002, and I'm sure you are aware of them, and you have heard them through the press. Lately, 2 years ago, there were some also reports on sexual abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo by colleagues from the World Health Organization and other agencies in the Ebola response. So it has been happening, but I think we are much more aware now. And what it has also improved is not only the transparency and the coordination, but also how we handed perpetrators to the authorities, because this is a heinous crime, and also how we defend the victims. I think the lack of imagination is also on finding solutions, and I think that's what we are here for, right? Finding solutions. And we have heard a lot of, I've heard with real pleasure, a lot of the initiatives to address the problems. Now that we understand the artificial intelligence is going ahead of us, and so we need to catch up in the legal frameworks. We are in the Consiglio dei Ministri, right? We need to assume that this is happening right now and is happening very close to us. I have a daughter who is 13. So, of course, this is touching all of us, and we think, we heard the statistics. How can we know that it's not happening to our children, right? I have the privilege of having a very close friend who is an expert on the area in Spain, which is the judge Yolanda Paredes, and she has illustrated me a lot about the situation in Europe. I haven't been in Europe in many years. I'm back living in Europe. I am very happy to be in my continent, but also amazed by the problems and the scale of the problems that we are dealing with, and the numbers of them. But also, we have solutions. It's true that only 3 out of 10 children in Spain, for example, have any parental controls on their devices, which is so scary. I mean, what are these kids looking at? I know that Italy has just passed recently a law to force also companies to include as a de facto controls on the devices, etc. I think those are great steps. Just the beginning of the steps, I will say. There are new criminal crimes that have been regulated. I know in the Spanish law they have been several also related to grooming and artificial intelligence. I think in the lack of imagination, our instincts also lack imagination of the positive solutions that we can address to them. And for that, I want to bring my positive message here. There is a very famous novel that probably all of you have read, which is The Lord of the Flies, right? You know, The Lord of the Flies. The William Golding won the Nobel Prize. The Lord of the Flies represents a society in which we are, by nature, we are selfish. And we are prone to savagery and violence. And it's a fantastic book, and I agree that there was a good reason why they gave them the Nobel Prize. I'm not discussing that. But that novel is based on a very negative perception we have of ourselves and our nature. And this is my positive message. Our mammalian nature, our nature and human beings is exactly the opposite of what it was portrayed in The Lord of the Flies. And I'm going to use a real example. You know, I work in emergencies. An emergency, 1965, 6 schoolboys went in a shipwreck, and actually what happened in The Lord of the Flies, it happened in real life. But the reality in real life is that those children were not prone into savagery and violence. They organized themselves as a very effective, empathetic society. They created a handspan, they had a water storage, they even have the religious ceremonies and praying. They were alone for 15 months. One of them broke his leg. It's a fascinating, real story, because this is my positive message. We have a new society to create, like these schoolboys in the island of Ata. They were from Tonga. They created a new, empathetic, positive, peaceful society. That's exactly what we have to do in the digital space, because we can, because our nature is of an empathetic, prone to love and solidarity, and I will go even forward to democracy, and that is who we really are. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's lovely to end with a positive message. Thank you. And talking about positive messages, we would like to give some voice to victims. And if I may ask our technical support, please, to provide the video of, what was it? That we missed before, the Brave movement. So we can conclude our day with their voices, because they should be at the center of this discourse.
Sorry I can't be there in person. My name is Daniela Ligero, and I am many things. I am a psychologist, I'm a mother of 2 adolescent girls, and I'm the CEO of Together for Girls, a global partnership working to end sexual violence against children around the world in over 24 countries. And we use a combination of data and advocacy to drive action. And yes, I am also a survivor of child sexual abuse. I was sexually abused by someone close to my family for many years, starting at the age of 6. And like so many around the world, I know what it's like to live in fear and to feel very, very alone. I'm also one of the few lucky ones, because eventually I was able to tell my parents what was happening, and I had access to services and support that helped me heal and become the person, mother, and leader I am today. And I'm also just a statistic. Based on the research we did with the World Health Organization and UNICEF that was launched last year at the first ever Global Ministerial on Violence Against Children, we know today that 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 7 boys around the world experience some form of sexual violence before their 18th birthday. This is unacceptable. There are way too many of us. So over 15 years ago, I started sharing publicly that I was a survivor of childhood sexual violence. At the time, I was working at the US Department of State under the Obama administration, and we were working on the first ever strategy to end violence against women and children for the US government globally. And I remember thinking, you know, if I am a powerful, educated woman doing this work, and I'm too scared or ashamed to say I experienced child sexual abuse, how could we ever expect the most vulnerable to come forward? Now, I want to say coming forward about your own experience as a survivor is not for everyone, but I felt a calling to do so. Mother Teresa once said, I can do things you cannot, and you can do things I cannot. Together, we can do great things. And I knew that the only really meaningful way to create change to end sexual violence against children is for all of us to come together and to combat the shame, the silence, the stigma that still exists around this issue. So about 3 years ago, I came together with 14 other amazing leaders, all of them public survivors from around the world, who are making change in their community, in their countries. And together we launched the Brave movement. This is a global movement of survivors and allies, because we need survivors and allies working together, focused on advocacy and campaigning to end childhood sexual violence. And we are active across Europe, Africa, Latin America, North America. We have regional work, national work, and global work. And right now, our global work is focused on 3 key areas that we think are essential to drive changes that are survivor-led. The first is abolishing statutes of limitation when it comes to sexual violence crimes against children. Justice should not have a time frame, and survivors need the time they need to come forward when they're ready to demand justice. And abolishing statutes of limitation is also a really important way to make sure that perpetrators and institutions that cover up abuse are held accountable. The second area of work we are campaigning on and demanding change around is online safety for children and adolescents. And I know this is an issue you care deeply about and are doing great work around. Today, online spaces and the internet are not safe for children, and that must change. And finally, we are advocating to establish national survivor councils that work with government to inform policy and decisions. We know that when survivors are at the table and our lived experience is heard and taken into account, policies and programs are better. Now, we've seen this National Survivor Council work beautifully in Germany, the only country to date that has a National Survivor Council focused on childhood sexual violence that informs government policy. And we're asking all governments to establish these. In fact, one of our campaigns that brings together these three asks is focused on G7. Now, as you may know, the G7 countries are meeting in June, as they do every year, this year in Canada, who has the presidency. And we are starting a campaign in just a few weeks with a scorecard where we are ranking each of the 7 countries that is part of the G7 on how well they're doing on SOLs, on online safety for children, on national survivor councils, and also on funding and policies around these important issues of childhood sexual violence. Italy, of course, will be ranked, as will the other 6 countries, the UK, Germany, France, Japan, the US, and Canada. And we hope to get your support to help amplify the message around the importance of making progress on these issues. Now, in closing, I want to thank you for your work, for your commitment, and for your leadership. The truth is, it will take all of us to end childhood sexual violence. It will take survivors and allies, decision makers and advocates. It will take practitioners, researchers, policymakers. It will take government, communities of faith, and the private sector. All of us need to be brave and step up for children. In closing, I want to leave you with this. The name of our movement is both a conviction. We must be brave so that children can be safe. But it's also an invitation. Join us. Let's be brave together to end childhood sexual violence and ensure every child everywhere can be safe. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck as you continue your meetings.
And that was the brave movement bringing the voices of survivors to this event. So we have come to the conclusion of this event, perfectly on time. And I would like just to say a few words, and then I'll pass on to Professor Caffo. Just really a brief summary of what has happened today. We've had a very intense morning full of Italian members of parliament providing their voices and their support for this cause. We've also, in the afternoon, had an array of international experts. And here we just have to thank Professor Caffo and obviously his team for putting together such a great event, making sure that we heard from evidence, academia, frontline officers, online platforms, government, parliament, third sector parties, NGOs, an incredible event so everybody could really share this powerful message that silence does not protect and sexual abuse is everybody's problem, and it's only through the sharing and collaboration that we can really fight this issue. I also see all this very positive. We know that child sexual abuse and the numbers that we heard is constantly growing, but we also know more. and we are fighting more, and we're sharing more, and children are coming forward to share their experiences. We know that also the knowledge that we have is what everybody describes as the tip of the iceberg. But it's only through this kind of work and these events that we can together, make our voices even stronger. We cannot work in isolation. The police cannot fight this cause on their own. Our data wouldn't go anywhere. It wouldn't make any sense if we don't have the support of charities, evidence, and parliamentarians to make use of our knowledge. And organizations like Telefono Azzurro wouldn't be able to continue this fight without all these voices and this collaboration. So I think this is incredibly positive. And Professor Caffo, over to you for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Elena. I think that today we had a different moment. We start with the message of the institutions, in particular the institution of President of the Republic and the President of the Council, and of different ministerial support. And we know that silence does not protect is an important issue for institutions. We have to give a voice to the victims. As the Call from Brave movement today now said, victims have to be at the center of our intervention. And we have to be back in the story of our action to see how the knowledge now are more important than in the past. In the past, we have only legal aspect. Now we know that we have to intervene early. We have to develop preventive strategy. But in particular, we need more research, more knowledge. We have to build a new instrument of intervention. And in this case, you have a different profession had to be engaged. Criminology is one of them, because you made a wonderful speech today. But mental health, child psychiatry, I have here a colleague from California, John Piacentini. We worked together for many years. Mental health and people, as our colleague Eduardo Roland, that work in the emergency. We have to combine new knowledge together. And we have to develop a new knowledge. For our organization, we started mainly with psychologists. Now we have more lawyers, sociologists, anthropologists, and statistics, and many other professions. Because if we like to manage, for example, the digital area of child protection, we need new collaboration. And the collaboration has to be more and more international. And this is our challenging opportunity. And this was the activity of this afternoon. One important issue that we like now to utilize in this, for this afternoon is the strategy that we develop in the Child Dignity Alliance. I think that this process that we started in 2017 had to be developed under the support of the Pope Francis words, because I think we have to integrate knowledge, expertise with a vision of a world which people can think about in a positive way, think about the new generation of children and adolescents, and to protect them in different way, and to listen to them. This morning was very important to have the adolescent with us. And I think this is the process that we have to do. For the reason today is not the ending day, it's the starting day of this process. And I thank all of you for this collaboration. We had other speech that were sent to us. I like only to remind Antonella Sberna, Vice President of the European Parliament, that present to us a very important document that will be put online as the Caterina Chinnici, that is the Vice Chairman of the Intergroup for Children, and to another message of Guido Scorza. But I think that today we make some step forward to face the problem. We have many things to do, but we did something today. Thank you for all of you. Thank you.